Chapter 1941. Although Zhu Luqi had heard about Duan Lingtian killing a genius martial cultivator at the peak of the exemplary saint stage 10 days ago, he did not think Duan Lingtian would be able to grow strong enough to kill Yang Chong before Yang Chong found out about his background. He only learned that everyone had innate spiritual roots that represented their innate talent when he came to the upper province of the Tao martial Saint Landi. The higher one's innate talent was, the higher the grade of the innate spiritual root would be. Zhu Luqi only had a yellow innate spiritual root, so he knew that his future was bleak. Initially, he had thought Duan Lingtian would at least have a green innate spiritual root or a blue one. He was surprised when word spread out from the Black Turtle Sanctum that Duan Lingtian possessed a yellow innate spiritual root just like him. For those who possessed yellow innate spiritual roots, it would be difficult for them to break through to the quintessential saint stage, let alone the saint celestial stage. As someone who was ranked 146th of the Supreme Saint rankings, Yang Chong must be at least at the third form or fourth form of the saint celestial stage. Duan Lingtian was merely an ordinary martial cultivator with a yellow innate spiritual root, so how was he planning to become stronger than Yang Chong? I wonder how senior brother Ji Yuli is doing. After parting ways with Zhu Luqi, Duan Lingtian made his way north. After he left the White Tiger Sanctum's central altar, he headed straight to the Vermilion Bird Sanctum that was located in the north. When he arrived at the Vermilion Bird Sanctum, he asked for direction and headed to the residence of the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples immediately. It's just as senior brother Lu Mu has said, the residence of the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples is indeed similar to the residence in the Black Turtle Sanctum and the White Tiger Sanctum, Duan Lingtian muttered to himself as he hovered in the sky and watched the residence of the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples. The residence of the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples was separated into 4 grades as well. Duan Lingtian stopped a Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciple who was leaving the residence and asked politely, "Senior brother, good day to you. May I ask if you know Ji Yuli?" Ji Yuli? No, I don't. The Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciple looked at Duan Lingtian indifferently before he walked away without even turning back to look at Duan Lingtian. It seems like not everyone I meet is going to be as nice as senior brother Lu Mu. Duan Lingtian shook his head as he watched the disappearing figure of the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciple before he looked away. Excuse me, do you know Ji Yuli? Senior sister, do you know Ji Yuli? Duan Lingtian stopped a few Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples who were either returning or leaving the residence of the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples to ask them if they knew Ji Yuli. At one point, he even thought of shouting Ji Yuli's name on the top of his lungs. However, this was the residence of the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples after all. If he shouted randomly, he would definitely offend many Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples. He could just leave, but it would definitely affect Ji Yuli. Ji Yuli definitely would not have good days in the sanctum if Duan Lingtian had done that. In front of a courteous house that slipped Duan Lingtian's notice, 3 Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples were talking and laughing among themselves. Suddenly, one of the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples raised his head, causing him to notice Duan Lingtian, whom he found familiar. When the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciple reached the end of his sentence, he asked his 2 companions, This person seems familiar. He's a Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple on top of that. Guys, look over there, doesn't he look like one of the people who entered the 4 Symbols Sanctum together with us?" At once, the other 2 Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples instantly looked at Duan Lingtian as well. Isn't this Duan Lingtian? One of the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples narrowed his eyes. I remember him. At that time, he killed Yang Wu, the son of the 5th elder of the Northern Plethora sect. That's how he offended First Silver Flame Elder Lian of the Black Turtle Sanctum. Duan Lingtian. When the other Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciple ascertained this person was indeed Duan Lingtian, his eyes brightened as he instantly flew out. What's he doing? I think he must have gone to look for Yuan Kuang. Yuan Kuang. Oh, yeah, I've almost forgotten. Yuan Kuang's older brother tried to make Duan Lingtian come to the Vermilion Bird Sanctum. Duan Lingtian's companion, Ji Yuli, has suffered quite a lot because of this matter. The 2 Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples whispered among themselves. Naturally, Duan Lingtian, who was standing in the distance, did not hear their conversation. Meanwhile, the other Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciple had already flown up into the sky and arrived at a Tertius house. He quickly knocked on the door. The door opened and a young man walked out. As he looked at the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciple who knocked on his door, he asked slightly impatiently with a frown, "Yes. When the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciple saw the young man who was also wearing the uniform exclusive to disciples from the Vermilion Bird Sanctum, he pointed at Duan Lingtian who was standing in the distance, and said excitedly, "Senior brother Yuan Hong, it's Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian is here. Duan Lingtian." Upon hearing that, Yuan Hong's eyes brightened and he instantly looked in the direction the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciple was pointing at. With just one glance, he immediately recognized Duan Lingtian. It's really him. Why did he come to the Vermilion Bird Sanctum? Is it possible that stubborn Ji Yu Li has finally asked him to come? It doesn't seem like it. The other Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciple shook his head. "Senior brother Yuan Kuang, it's not like you don't know how stubborn Ji Yu Li is. I don't think he'll ask Duan Lingtian to come even if we kill him. I think Duan Lingtian came on his own accord. It seems like he's stopping people and asking them something. It seems like he's really here to look for Ji Yu Li. Not only that, it seems like he doesn't know which courthouse house Ji Yu Li is staying in," Yuan Kuang muttered to himself as his eyes shone coldly. Then, he flew out to where the 100 Secundus houses were located before he descended in front of a Secundus house. Bang, 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 Yuan Kuang raised his hand and knocked on the door quickly. It did not seem like he was afraid the owner of the house would be angry. Creak. Soon after, the door opened and someone with an annoyed expression peered out. When the person inside saw Yuan Kuang, his annoyed expression vanished immediately and was replaced with an expression of affection. "Little Kuang, why are you looking for me?" The person standing in the house was also a young man whose eyes bore some resemblance to Yuan Kuang's eyes. "Big brother, Duan Lingtian is here," Yuan Kuang replied as he glanced at Duan Lingtian who was standing in the distance. This young man was none other than Yuan Hong, Yuan Kuang's older brother. When Yuan Hong heard Yuan Kuang's words, his eyes brightened up as well. He instantly looked at the direction where Yuan Kuang was staring at. The Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple. "Little Kuang, are you certain he's Duan Lingtian? Big brother, don't forget that I was there when he and Yang Wu engaged in a death duel. I know he's Duan Lingtian," Yuan Kuang answered with certainty. "However, I don't think that stubborn Ji Yu Li asked him to come. Duan Lingtian's currently asking around looking for Ji Yu Li. It's obvious he doesn't even know which courthouse house Ji Yu Li is staying in," Yuan Kuang added again. "He actually came on his own accord. Good, very good." Yuan Hong looked at Duan Lingtian with cold eyes as a fierce expression appeared on his face. "Big brother, according to the news that came from the Black Turtle Sanctum during these 2 days, Duan Lingtian seems to have mastered 2 divine abilities. Although his cultivation base is only at the early exemplary saint stage, his strength is at the peak of the exemplary saint stage. Moreover, he even killed another Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple who was at the peak of the exemplary saint stage 10 days ago." Yuan Kuang said, "It's said that this Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple was a martial genius who possessed a blue innate spiritual root. Elder Lian even planned to accept him as a disciple. If he did not die, he would have become your junior uncle, big brother. Master is still unaware of this matter. Otherwise, he would have been furious." Yuan Hong stared at Duan Lingtian who was standing in the distance with a cold gaze. Grand Master has finally found a suitable direct disciple. To think he has been killed by Duan Lingtian. It's obvious that Duan Lingtian is opposing Grand Master on purpose. In order to seek revenge for Grand Master, I'm going to teach Duan Lingtian a lesson today. Big brother, his strength doesn't seem to be simple, Yuan Kuang reminded. So what if it's not simple? He's only at the peak of the exemplary saint stage at most. Your big brother, on the other hand, has long broken through to the early quintessential saint stage a year ago. Yuan Hong said disdainfully as a contemptuous expression appeared on his face. Yuan Hong was a Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciple whose cultivation base was at the early quintessential saint stage. Apart from this, he was also the direct disciple of the great disciple of the Black Turtle Sanctum's first Silver Flame Elder Lian. In terms of seniority, Lian was his Grand Master. Although Lian's great direct disciple had a blue innate spiritual root, due to the fact that he was relatively young, he was only a Bronze Flame Elder in the fire worship sect for the time being. With his blue innate spiritual root, he would definitely become a Silver Flame Elder in the future. In fact, it was not impossible for him to become a Golden Flame Elder as well. Yuan Hong was very clear about his master's prospect. As someone who had a green innate spiritual root, he knew he was lucky that his master accepted him as a disciple. For this reason, he wanted to please his master so that his master would think highly of him and pay more attention to him. It was a coincidence that his brother, Yuan Kuang, had also come to the fire worship sect. He had used his master's name and requested a silver flame elder in the Vermilion Bird Sanctum to select his brother to join the Vermilion Bird Sanctum. It was through this that Yuan Hong learned from Yuan Kuang how Duan Lingtian had offended his Grand Master. Yuan Hong knew this was a good opportunity for him to impress his Grand Master. His master would definitely be happy, and he would be able to win his Grand Master's heart if he managed to teach Duan Lingtian a lesson. Chapter 1942. Prior to this, Yuan Hong had even thought of heading to the Black Turtle Sanctum to teach Duan Lingtian a lesson so he could seek revenge for his Grand Master. However, he quickly dismissed this idea. He was a Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciple. If he entered the Black Turtle Sanctum and beat a Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple, he would definitely cause the other Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples to be furious. If a Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple who was stronger than him stood up for Duan Lingtian, he would be the one who was beaten up instead. Even if his Grand Master was Lian, it did not mean that all Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples would not do anything out of respect for his Grand Master. There were a few martial geniuses with blue innate spiritual roots in the Black Turtle Sanctum. All of them were direct disciples of the few Silver Flame Elders in the Saint Land. Each of them was arrogant so they might think nothing of his Grand Master. For this reason, Yuan Hong had dismissed the idea of going to the Black Turtle Sanctum to teach Duan Lingtian a lesson. Big brother, it just so happens that Duan Lingtian's companion entered the Vermilion Bird Sanctum with my group of companions. Previously, when he heard Yuan Kuang's words, he seemed to have suddenly seen a ray of hope in the dark. From that moment onward, Ji Yuli had been living a miserable life. Yuan Hong and Yuan Kuang would find Ji Yuli every few days and torture him. Naturally, they did not kill nor maim him. They tortured him in hopes of breaking his will. Their objective was to break his spirit so that he would lure Duan Lingtian over to the Vermilion Bird Sanctum. In Yuan Hong's opinion, as long as Duan Lingtian came to the Vermilion Bird Sanctum, he could then teach him a lesson however he liked. Unfortunately, no matter how badly they tortured Ji Yuli just gritted his teeth and endured it all. From the beginning until the end, he had no intention of betraying Duan Lingtian at all. This made Yuan Hong and Yuan Kuang feel extremely frustrated. For this reason, when they saw Duan Lingtian came to the Vermilion Bird Sanctum on his own accord, they became extremely excited. It was as though they were two stray dogs who had just seen a bone that they could not wait to sink their teeth into. That Cortis house. Thank you, senior brother. Heaven would always reward people who were hardworking and faithful. After Duan Lingtian had asked several dozens of Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples, he finally found out which Cortis house Ji Yuli was living in. Duan Lingtian looked at Ji Yuli's Cortis house and was about to make his way there when Yuan Hong noticed this. He instantly said to Yuan Kuang, "He seems to have found Ji Yuli's Cortis house. Go lure Ji Yuli out, and I'll go and meet Duan Lingtian." Yuan Kuang made his move as quick as a bolt of lightning as he made his way to Ji Yuli's Cortis house. Yuan Kuang's action naturally caught Duan Lingtian's attention and made him come to a sudden halt. At this moment, he figured out what was going on when Yuan Hong sneaked an attack and slapped him. Bang! At the moment when Duan Lingtian noticed Yuan Hong's sneak attack, it was already too late for him to evade the attack. All he could do was mobilize the Sun Saint energy through his 99 Saint veins to protect his body and to prevent himself from being sent flying from Yuan Hong's slap. Since Yuan Hong did not use his full force, coupled with the fact that Duan Lingtian's Sun Saint energy had formed a protective layer around his body, he only suffered minor injuries. Although Duan Lingtian's injuries were minor, it upset his internal organs causing him to throw up a mouthful of blood. "Who are you? Why did you sneak an attack from me?" Duan Lingtian took a deep breath and wiped the blood off the corner of his mouth as he stared coldly at the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciple standing nearby. Duan Lingtian was certain he had not met this person before, therefore, he was certain he had not offended this person as well. Why would this person attack him for no reason? Duan Lingtian could not figure it out at all. It's senior brother Yuan Hong. Why would senior brother Yuan Hong attack a Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple? Don't tell me this Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple has offended senior brother Yuan Hong. When Yuan Hong attacked Duan Lingtian, it had attracted the attention of many Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples. Soon after, more and more Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples walked out of their residences to watch the show. Yuan Hong. Duan Lingtian's frown deepened when he heard the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples' words. Not only had he not seen the other person prior to this, but he had not even heard of his name before. Junior brother Ling Tian. A familiar voice suddenly rang in Duan Ling Tian's voice, causing him to be pleasantly surprised. Senior brother Ji Yu Li. However, when he turned to look at the source of the voice, his expression turned grave immediately. In the near distance, he saw the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciple who was heading to Ji Yu Li's courthouse house earlier, carrying Ji Yu Li in the air as though he was carrying a potato sack as he made his way over. Both of Ji Yu Li's cheeks were swollen as fresh blood covered his face. With just a glance, one could tell he was just recently given a beating. Leave now. Yuan Hong's planning to beat you up. He's Li An's grand disciple. He's a martial cultivator at the early quintessential saint stage. Ji Yu Li roared out loud with his red and swollen face. If he did not hear Duan Ling Tian's voice and worried about Duan Ling Tian being put in a disadvantageous position, he would not be lured out by Yuan Kuang. The numerous beatings he had endured had taught him to protect himself better now. Li An's grand disciple. At this moment, the questions in Duan Ling Tian's head vanished immediately. Since the other party was Li An's grand disciple, everything made sense now. Slap. At this moment, the crisp sound of a slap rang in the air. Yuan Kuang, who was carrying Ji Yu Li, slapped him before he scolded him loudly, "Trash. Did I give you permission to speak? You're seeking death." When Duan Ling Tian saw this, his expression turned grim immediately. He quickly mobilized his Sun Saint energy and cast his golden crow's wings. With just a flash, he charged toward Ji Yu Li and Yuan Kuang. His speed was so fast it was like a bolt of lightning. "You're the one that's seeking death." Yuan Hong made his move at the same time. He charged toward Duan Ling Tian immediately. Yuan Hong fully unleashed his speed at the early quintessential saint stage. Moreover, he even managed to stop Duan Ling Tian. At this moment, Duan Ling Tian did not cast the divine ability, the elementary devouring tactic, yet. Naturally, his speed was not comparable to an early quintessential saint stage martial cultivator like Yuan Hong. "Duan Ling Tian, you'll have to go through my big brother first if you want to rescue Ji Yu Li." Yuan Kuang laughed unreservedly when he saw this. Slap, slap, slap. After that, Yuan Kuang proceeded to slap Ji Yu Li a few more times in front of Duan Ling Tian, causing Ji Yu Li's face to swell up even more. Ji Yu Li's eyes were as wide as saucers when he glared at Yuan Kuang as he tried his best to endure this. However, he was merely a divine saint stage martial cultivator. The moment his saint energy began to form in his body, it had already been nullified by Yuan Kuang's saint energy. Yuan Kuang was an exemplary saint stage martial cultivator, it was only natural that he was stronger than Ji Yu Li. Ji Yu Li clenched his teeth so hard they almost broke. At this moment, he only hated himself for being weak. Not only was he no help to junior brother Ling Tian, but he even became a burden to him. This time, Duan Ling Tian no longer said anything. However, he looked at Yuan Kuang as though he was looking at a dead man. "Remember that both of you forced me into a corner," Duan Ling Tian said in a hoarse voice after a while. A terrifying tone could be heard in his voice, sending shivers up the spines of the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples present on the scene. At the same time, killing intent surged out continuously from Duan Ling Tian's body. "Duan Ling Tian, he's Duan Ling Tian, Duan Ling Tian from the Black Turtle Sanctum. He's wearing the exclusive uniform of a Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple, so you must be right. I heard Duan Ling Tian has even killed a martial genius at the peak of the exemplary saint stage in the Black Turtle Sanctum 10 days ago. Due to the reason that the other party was the one who initiated the attack, he was found not guilty. Rumor has it that even though his cultivation base is not at the quintessential saint stage yet, he can be considered as an elite powerhouse among the powerhouses at the peak of the exemplary saint stage." A commotion broke out immediately when people ascertained the person in front of them was the Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple, Duan Ling Tian. All the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples stared at Duan Ling Tian with a burning gaze as though they were a group of hunters who had just seen their prey. Currently, Duan Ling Tian was not only famous in the Black Turtle Sanctum, but he was also famous in the Four Symbols Sanctums. For this reason, after learning the Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple was Duan Ling Tian, other than the group of Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples who were already present on the scene looking at him curiously, more disciples began to walk out of their residences to look at Duan Ling Tian. "I've long heard that Elder Li An is actually senior brother Yuan Hong's Grand Master. Judging from senior brother Yuan Hong's actions, it seems like he plans to teach Duan Ling Tian a lesson on behalf of his Grand Master." Senior brother Yuan Hong is an early quintessential saint stage powerhouse. Although Duan Lingtian is strong, he's only considered as an elite powerhouse among martial cultivators at the peak of the exemplary saint stage. I'm afraid he's doomed. They would not have thought this way if news of Duan Lingtian defeating Zhang Ji, an early quintessential saint stage disciple in the Black Turtle Sanctum, today had spread here. In terms of strength, Zhang Ji was very close to breaking through to the intermediate quintessential saint stage and had even mastered a high-grade offensive divine ability. He was not someone Yuan Hong, this trash who had only broken through to the early quintessential saint stage, could compare to. It was not just the group of onlooking Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples who was not informed about the incident of Duan Lingtian defeated Zhang Ji, even Yuan Hong was unaware of it. Otherwise, he would not have dared to offend Duan Lingtian even if he was given more courage. We forced you into a corner. Due to his ignorance, Yuan Hong flashed a disdainful look and smiled mockingly when he heard Duan Lingtian's words. So what if we want to force you into a corner? Don't tell me you think you're a match for us. Today, in addition to beating Ji Yu Li, we're going to teach you a lesson as well. If you want to blame someone, blame yourself for your terrible judgment and offending my Grand Master. As soon as he finished speaking, he charged out at Duan Lingtian. The two of you deserve to die. A hoarse voice reverberated in the air again. At this moment, a terrifying whirlpool appeared around Duan Lingtian and began to completely devour the surrounding heaven and earth spirit energy. Chapter 1943. Boom. A few moments later, the Sun Saint energy in Duan Lingtian's body, along with the endless heaven and earth spirit energy he absorbed from his surroundings, erupted immediately. In just a blink of an eye, the Sun Saint energy had already become so powerful that it was equivalent to the exemplary saint stage. This morning, Duan Lingtian had used this Sun Saint energy to battle with Zhang Ji, the early quintessential saint stage disciple from the Black Turtle Sanctum. If it was not for the fact that Zhang Ji had mastered a high-grade offensive divine ability, he was certain he could defeat Zhang Ji easily with his strength. Not only that, he would not have ended in such a wretched manner after he defeated Zhang Ji. It was fortunate that Duan Lingtian had entered the 4th level of the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda to recuperate before this. Otherwise, his spiritual energy and Sun Saint energy would not be so strong now. Although it was not fully recovered, it was enough for him to deal with Yuan Hong. Yuan Hong was merely an ordinary early quintessential saint stage martial cultivator. Even if it was Zhang Ji, it would not take him more than 10 moves to defeat him. Duan Lingtian's strength was in no way inferior to Zhang Ji. Since Zhang Ji was stronger than Yuan Hong, naturally, it would not take more than 10 moves as well for Duan Lingtian to kill Yuan Hong. You've come just in time. Faced with Yuan Hong who was charging toward him menacingly, Duan Lingtian's gaze turned cold as the pair of golden crow's wings behind him flapped suddenly, raising his speed to the limit. At this moment, he was far faster than Yuan Hong. How fast? Upon seeing the speed Duan Lingtian demonstrated, the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples were baffled. Since they were standing at the side to observe the fight, they could tell Duan Lingtian's speed was much faster than Yuan Hong's speed. This greatly shocked them. From the news they heard, Duan Lingtian's speed when he killed Ji Yulong, the Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple who was at the peak of the exemplary saint stage, 10 days ago was merely almost at the speed of an early quintessential saint stage martial cultivator. He was not as fast he was now. Duan Lingtian's current speed is comparable to an intermediate quintessential saint stage martial cultivator. There was no lack of quintessential saint stage disciples among the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples who came to watch the sect. They could easily tell this just by looking. Duan Lingtian's speed has reached the stage of an intermediate quintessential saint stage martial cultivator. The other Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples who heard this statement widened their eyes immediately. They all had an expression of disbelief and shock on their faces. It has only been 10 days, but his speed has increased so much. My goodness. Can anybody tell me what's going on please? Could it be that he actually concealed his strength 10 days ago? It's possible. Based on the news from the Black Turtle Sanctum 2 days ago, it said that Duan Lingtian's strength is at the early quintessential saint stage, but it still hasn't reached a stage where he could threaten a quintessential saint stage powerhouse. It's very possible he concealed his strength 10 days ago when he fought Ji Yulong. Actually, other than concealing his strength, there's another possibility. He could have made a breakthrough to the intermediate exemplary saint stage during these 10 days. Everyone was shocked by Duan Lingtian's speed as they discussed among themselves. They kept discussing the battle where Duan Lingtian killed Ji Yulong, the martial cultivator at the peak of the exemplary saint stage, in the Black Turtle Sanctum. That battle had also revealed Duan Lingtian's strength in front of the others. However, Duan Lingtian's strength 10 days ago was not comparable to his strength now. They were on a completely different level. How's this possible? At the same time, Yuan Kuang, who was carrying Ji Yuli, turned horrified when he saw Duan Lingtian's speed that was faster than his brother. An expression of disbelief and shock appeared on his face. Junior brother Lingtian, awesome. Ji Yuli, who had seen this, burst out laughing immediately. He was pleasantly surprised, and there was an expression of satisfaction on his face. What are you laughing at? Yuan Kuang's expression turned grim immediately when he heard Ji Yuli's laughter. He raised his hand to slap Ji Yuli again until one half of his face swelled up even more. Ji Yuli, who was slapped again, smiled sinisterly and said angrily before he threw up blood, "You can slap me as much as you like. You won't be able to act so arrogantly for long anyway. Don't even think that you'll be able to escape unless you kill me, of course." At this instant, all of the dark cloud hanging around Ji Yuli had vanished. He only felt happiness at this moment. Yuan Kuang, who was infuriated, slapped Ji Yuli a few times again. Despite his wrath, he really did not dare to kill or maim Ji Yuli. Even his big brother, Yuan Kuang, did not dare to kill Duan Lingtian regardless of how much he wanted to seek revenge for his grandmaster Lian. This was because he feared the rules in the fire worship sect. Yuan Hong merely had the green spiritual root, so if he violated the fire worship sect's rule that prohibited disciples of the same sect from killing each other, he would definitely be given the death sentence. Even his master would not be able to save him. Although his master had a blue innate spiritual root, it had nothing to do with him. They were different people after all. Unless his master had an indigo innate spiritual root, then his master might be able to beg for leniency for him. How did his speed become so fast? When the onlookers realized that Duan Lingtian's speed had become even faster than Yuan Hong's speed, Yuan Hong had also noticed it. A horrified expression instantly appeared on his face. Don't tell me has already broken through to the intermediate exemplary saint stage. At this moment, this thought rose up in his mind. The news about Duan Lingtian's cultivation base being at the early exemplary saint stage when he killed Ji Yulong, the Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple at the peak of the exemplary saint stage, 10 days ago had also reached the Vermilion Bird Sanctum. For this reason, after he saw the speed Duan Lingtian demonstrated, he immediately felt that Duan Lingtian must have made a breakthrough during these 10 days to the intermediate exemplary saint stage. Looks like he has indeed broken through. His strength and aura are equivalent to the peak of the exemplary saint stage. This is also the advantage of the assist-type divine ability he mastered. It has to be a high-grade divine ability. Yuan Hong thought to himself as jealousy rose in his heart. In Yuan Hong's eyes, Duan Lingtian was merely an exemplary saint stage martial cultivator. However, he managed to master 2 high-grade divine abilities. This undoubtedly affected Yuan Hong, who had yet to master any high-grade divine abilities. This was the reason Yuan Hong was so jealous of Duan Lingtian. Although Duan Lingtian's speed was faster than Yuan Hong did not give up. The reason his speed is this fast is only due to the high-grade movement divine ability. If he doesn't have that high-grade movement divine ability, his speed won't be faster than mine. Unless he has also mastered another high-grade offensive divine, it's impossible for him to be a match for me. Yuan Hong began to feel more confident when he thought of this. His speed is indeed faster than mine, but it's only because it's raised by the assist-type divine ability. It'll only last for a moment before it returns to its original state. Yuan Hong's eyes flashed coldly as he charged toward Duan Lingtian without slowing down. Boom! Yuan Hong punched his fist out at lightning speed. The punch that appeared casual and light actually contained a terrifying force from his martial tactic. The force of the wind and thunder appeared in the wake of his punch as it swept toward Duan Lingtian. Judging by how it looked, it seemed as though it could even destroy a gigantic mountain. Faced with Yuan Hong's punch that was terrifyingly powerful, Duan Lingtian's expression turned even colder. Swoosh! With a raise of his hand, the 100 inscriptions saint sword that Duan Lingtian obtained from Zhao Wu appeared in his hand. He pointed the sword outward. It contained the profundity of the supreme sword Dao mental cultivation method, the Sovereign Heart Sword. The force of the profundity of the Sovereign Heart Sword granted to Duan Lingtian's sword was in no way inferior to the force of an ordinary heaven-ranked saint-grade martial tactic. Finally, under the watchful eyes of the others, Duan Lingtian's 100 inscriptions saint sword clashed with Yuan Hong's punch. To be more precise, the vast energy surging out from both parties clashed with one another. During the clash, Duan Lingtian had used 100 inscriptions saint sword, but Yuan Hong did not use any saint weapon. This could be considered as Duan Lingtian securing a small advantage. Boom! As a loud noise reverberated in the air as a terrifying energy swept out from the point where the sword and the fist collided. Hurricanes appeared and blew at the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples, causing their robes to flutter violently. Many of the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples whose cultivation base that was much weaker had to shut their eyes. A few moments later, under the watchful eyes of the others, Yuan Hong stood still, unaffected, as the hurricane swept against him. Duan Lingtian, on the other hand, was sent flying with a blast. His face turned pale immediately. Clamor. Upon seeing this, the scene burst out in another commotion. Initially, seeing how Duan Lingtian's speed was faster than senior brother Yuan Hong, I thought he would have the strength to defeat senior brother Yuan Hong. It did not cross my mind that he would fall into a disadvantageous position during the collision, especially when he used 100 inscriptions saint sword while senior brother Yuan Hong did not use any weapons. Yuan Hong is a true early quintessential saint stage powerhouse after all. As for Duan Lingtian, although his speed is faster than Yuan Hong, that's because of his high-grade movement divine ability. Judging from the aura emanating out of his body, it's only equivalent to the peak of the exemplary saint stage. The reason he's so strong is all thanks to the boost from the assist-type divine ability he cast. Once the assist-type divine ability's effect wears off, he'll revert to his original state. At that time, he won't stand a chance in defeating Yuan Hong. Well, unless he has mastered a high-grade offensive divine ability, he might be a match for senior brother Yuan Hong's match at all. Seeing how Duan Lingtian was in a disadvantageous position, the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples began to discuss among themselves again when they saw Duan Lingtian had fallen into a disadvantageous position. Based on their words, it was obvious they did not think highly of him. Perhaps he has mastered a high-grade offensive divine ability, but he just hasn't revealed it yet. A small number of people chimed in. Chapter 1944, Impossible. Upon hearing somebody mention that Duan Lingtian might have mastered a high-grade offensive divine ability, another Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciple quickly refuted him. It's certain that Duan Lingtian's movement divine ability is a high-grade divine ability. His assist-type divine ability that raises his strength is also most likely a high-grade divine ability as well. The fact that he could master 2 high-grade divine abilities is considered as very lucky and rare. How can all of you even think he has mastered a 3rd high-grade divine ability? Aren't all of you thinking too much? Do all of you think high-grade divine abilities are so easily found like vegetables in the market? The Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciple spoke passionately. As soon as he finished speaking, many Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples agreed with him. That's right, it's impossible for Duan Lingtian to master a 3rd high-grade divine ability. It's not easy to master so many high-grade divine abilities. Take senior brother Yuan Hong as an example. Despite his cultivation base at the early quintessential saint stage, he still hasn't mastered a high-grade divine ability. It seems like Duan Lingtian is going to be defeated soon. If he's defeated, he's doomed. Senior brother Yuan Hong might not kill or maim him due to the sect's rules, but he would beat Duan Lingtian up to the point where he would wish for death instead. Looks like senior brother Yuan Hong planned to seek revenge for his grand master to get into his master's good grace. Poor Duan Lingtian, just like that, he has innocently become a tool for Yuan Hong to use to get into his master's good grace. Based on the discussion among the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples, it was obvious they felt that Duan Lingtian was going to be defeated by Yuan Hong and he would suffer from humiliation and defeat to the point that he would wish for death. When the small number of Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples who felt that there was a possibility that Duan Lingtian had mastered a high-grade offensive divine ability heard the other disciples' words, some of them began to change their minds. However, there were some who stood by their opinion. Naturally, they did not voice it out loud. If they were to do that now, they would definitely be verbally attacked by the other Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples. Yuan Kuang relaxed when he saw Yuan Hong sent Duan Lingtian flying with a blast with just a low. After that, he turned to look at Ji Yuli whom he was still holding and sneered as he said, "Ji Yuli, did you see that? So what if Duan Lingtian is much faster than my big brother? Even if he has the 100 inscriptions saint sword in his hand, he's still no match for my brother when it comes to a direct fight." Ji Yuli's expression was grave. There were hints of worries in his eyes as he looked at Duan Lingtian. Junior brother Ling Tian, seize this chance when your assist-type divine ability is still in effect. Hurry up and leave the Vermilion Bird Sanctum. Don't ever come back again. At the very least don't come back until you're stronger than Yuan Hong. Ji Yuli quickly transmitted his voice to Duan Ling Tian in urgency. However, he did not receive any response at all. It was as though Duan Ling Tian did not hear his voice transmission. Ji Yuli continued to transmit his voice, but he still did not receive any response. What's junior brother Ling Tian trying to do? Ji Yuli was extremely anxious that he could not stop clenching his teeth. Under the watchful eyes of the others, the golden crow's wings behind Duan Ling Tian flapped without warning, causing the air in the surroundings to stir violently. Boom, 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 boom. When the air stirred violently, the thunderous sound of air explosions reverberated in the air. Swish. At the same time, under the watchful gaze of the crowds, Duan Ling Tian seemed to have transformed into a sharp arrow as he soared up disappeared in the horizon. Upon seeing this, Ji Yuli sighed in relief. He thought Duan Ling Tian had taken his advice and was leaving the Vermilion Bird Sanctum. Trying to flee, Yuan Hong smirked coldly before soaring up into the sky as well to chase after Duan Ling Tian. He also disappeared into the horizon. Come on, let's go and have a look. At the same time, the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples were also prepared to fly into the sky to watch the show. However, just as they were about to fly up, they suddenly stopped. Not only that, they were staring at the horizon with their mouths agape. To be more precise, they were staring in shock at a group of clouds by the horizon. Behind the cloud, stood Duan Ling Tian whom they thought had fled. Not only that, he seemed to be holding onto somebody in his hand. Upon closer inspection, they saw it was Yuan Hong. At this moment, Yuan Hong was bleeding profusely from 3 holes on his body. He was passed out, and Duan Ling Tian held onto him like a potato sack. The reason they knew Yuan Hong had only passed out because they could see he was still breathing. The entire place fell silent. Yuan Hong's breathing sounded particularly loud. The scene of Duan Ling Tian carrying Yuan Hong like a potato sack seemed very familiar to the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples present on the scene. At the same time, many Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples shifted their attention to Yuan Kuang who was standing nearby and carrying Ji Yuli. They looked at him weirdly. No matter how they looked at it, they felt that Duan Ling Tian had intentionally held onto Yuan Hong like how Yuan Kuang was holding Ji Yuli. How's this possible? Most of them were shocked by Duan Ling Tian's strength. Based on the current situation, it seemed like Duan Ling Tian was stronger than Yuan Hong. Otherwise, how could Yuan Hong be defeated? When Yuan Kuang saw Yuan Hong who had passed out and being carried by Duan Ling Tian like a sack of potatoes, he cried out in disbelief, "Big brother." When he looked at Duan Ling Tian again, a hint of terror could be seen in his eyes. It did not cross his mind that Duan Ling Tian was stronger than his big brother, Yuan Hong. Don't tell me he really mastered another high-grade offensive divine ability. The Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples began to whisper among themselves again. They felt certain Duan Ling Tian had indeed mastered a high-grade offensive divine ability. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for him to overpower Yuan Hong. Freak, to think that he has actually mastered 3 high-grade divine abilities. He's only an exemplary saint stage martial cultivator. If he has a green innate spiritual root or higher, his future would have been very bright. What a pity. It's indeed a pity. There's a big possibility that someone with a yellow innate spiritual root won't be able to break through to the quintessential saint stage. Even if he's lucky enough to enter the quintessential saint stage, there's no chance of him breaking through to the saint celestial stage. A person with a green spiritual root, on the other hand, would definitely be able to enter the saint celestial stage and become a true powerhouse in our fire worship sect. If this Duan Ling Tian's cultivation base breaks through to the Saint Celestial stage, coupled with the 3 divine abilities he mastered, an ordinary Saint Celestial stage won't stand a chance against him at all. What a pity that he's just a commoner who possesses a yellow innate spiritual root. When the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples discussed about Duan Ling Tian's yellow innate spiritual root, they shook their heads in pity. Duan Ling Tian managed to master 3 high-grade divine abilities, but he only had a yellow innate spiritual root. Most people would find this pitiful. Release your grip. As Duan Ling Tian descended from the sky while holding the unconscious Yuan Hong, he shouted without warning as he looked at Yuan Kuang. As he shouted, his left eye, the strange pupil, flashed and shot out a dragon form soul attack. The soul attack flew across the sky and entered Yuan Kuang's body swiftly, crashing against his soul violently. At this moment, he instinctively let go of the hand that was holding on to Ji Yuli. Now that Yuan Kuang released his hand, Ji Yuli finally regained his freedom. Nobody was restricting the saint energy in his body any longer. Junior brother Ling Tian, after he regained his freedom, Ji Yuli did not lose his rationality. He immediately flew to Duan Ling Tian's side. He sighed in relief since he knew he was free from danger for now. Duan Ling Tian's true cultivation base was merely at the intermediate divine saint stage, and so was his soul. For this reason, the soul attack that was cast by his current soul was not enough to destroy Yuan Kuang's soul. Yuan Kuang was a true exemplary saint stage martial cultivator, and his soul was more powerful than Duan Ling Tian. Naturally, Duan Ling Tian had no intention of killing Yuan Kuang when he cast the soul attack. He merely wanted Yuan Kuang to release Ji Yuli. Although he knew Yuan Kuang did not dare to kill Ji Yuli, Duan Ling Tian did not want to see Ji Yuli being Yuan Kuang's control. In his opinion, it was a passive position, and it was a position he hated. Soon after, Yuan Kuang regained his consciousness and discovered Ji Yuli was no longer in his grasp. Horror dawned on him immediately. He took a deep breath and looked at Duan Ling Tian before he said coldly, "Let go of my brother, Duan Ling Tian." "Let go of your brother? Why should I?" Duan Ling Tian smiled nonchalantly. His smile looked sinister, sending shivers running up Yuan Kuang's spine. "What can you do if you don't let go? Don't tell me you dare to kill my brother," Yuan Kuang asked in a deep voice. "As a matter of fact, you're right. I intend to kill your brother." Duan Ling Tian sneered as his eyes flashed coldly. "You won't be able to live if you kill my brother." Upon hearing his statement, Yuan Kuang's eyes narrowed. At the same time, he said coldly, "Don't forget the rules of the fire worship sect." Creak. As the moment Yuan Kuang uttered the word, "rule," a noise sounded. Duan Ling Tian had twisted Yuan Hong's neck. It was simple and straightforward. Swish, swish. As Duan Ling Tian twisted Yuan Hong's neck, he did not forget to stab him twice. The first stab shattered Yuan Hong's soul. The second stab pierced through Yuan Hong's heart. At this moment, even if a deity descended from the sky, he would not be able to save Yuan Hong. The entire place fell silent when Yuan Hong was killed. The Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples stared at the scene before them with their mouth agape. They did not think Duan Ling Tian would disregard the sect's rules and kill Yuan Hong. Yuan Kuan, who was pale with an expression of disbelief on his face, finally regained his senses. He looked at Duan Ling Tian as though he was looking at a ghost as he said in a trembling voice, "Why you actually dare to kill my brother? Why you're dead, you're dead." His tone was filled with grief when he spoke. Chapter 1945, Not only do I dare to kill your brother, but I dare to kill you as well. After killing Yuan Hong, Duan Ling Tian looked at Yuan Kuang with blood-curdling killing intent, causing shivers to run up Yuan Kuang's spine. Not only that, but at this moment, Yuan Kuang was so afraid that his body had even begun to tense up. When he saw Duan Ling Tian through the body of his brother, Yuan Hong, to him with just a raise of his hand, he finally moved to catch his brother's body as he suppressed the terror in his heart. Run, Yuan Kuan thought to himself. As soon as he caught Yuan Hong's body, he no longer dared to act recklessly when he recalled Duan Ling Tian's words and tried to hurriedly leave with his brother's body. Whoosh. However, as soon as Yuan Kuang tried to leave with Yuan Hong's body, the area within a 100 meter of Duan Ling Tian was shrouded in a golden light. Duan Ling Tian, Yuan Kung, and Yuan Hong were all hidden by the 10,000 Swords territory, disappearing from the view of the Vermilion Bird Sanctum. Did Duan Ling Tian say he wants to kill Yuan Kuang earlier? It's not enough that he killed Yuan Hong, but he wants to kill Yuan Kuang as well. It seems like Duan Ling Tian knows he's in trouble now and is acting recklessly. He knows that he'll be sentenced to death for killing Yuan Hong. It doesn't matter now even if he kills Yuan Kuang. It's the Yuan brothers' bad luck for encountering such a ruthless person who doesn't even care about his own life. Duan Ling Tian is really too ruthless. The Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples whispered among themselves. Terror could be heard in their tones as they spoke about Duan Ling Tian. They all agreed that Duan Ling Tian was a ruthless person. After consolidating the 10,000 Swords territory, before he made a move on Yuan Kuang, he looked at Ji Yuli who was standing next to him and said, "Senior brother Ji Yuli, I'll send you out first." As soon as Duan Ling Tian finished speaking, he mobilized the Sun Saint energy in his body. Before Ji Yuli even had time to respond, he was already sent out of the 10,000 Swords territory. In the next instant, Ji Yuli's body appeared before the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples. He naturally attracted their attention. It's him. Duan Lingtian seems to be seeking revenge for him. I wonder what relationship does he have with Duan Lingtian? Ji Yuli, naturally, became the center of everyone's attention since they could not see the situation inside the 10,000 Swords territory. I heard Duan Lingtian addressing him as senior brother. I remember him. I entered the fire worship sect at the same time with Duan Lingtian. He was selected to go to the Black Turtle Sanctum while I was selected to come here. I remember they were together at that time. In that case, it means that Ji Yuli must have a close relationship with Duan Lingtian even before they entered the fire worship sect. Isn't this obvious? Didn't you hear Ji Yuli calling Duan Lingtian's senior brother? They must have been disciples from the same sect before they came to the fire worship sect. If that's the case, it's no wonder Duan Lingtian was so furious to the point that he would even kill Yuan Hong. The Vermilion Bird's disciples whispered among themselves again. They did not agree with how impulsively Duan Lingtian had acted by killing Yuan Hong. In their opinion, Duan Lingtian was just seeking death by doing so. He would probably have to pay with his life for violating the fire worship sect's rules and killing a fellow disciple. Junior brother Lingtian, Ji Yuli who was sent out by did not pay attention to the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples. Horror dawned on his face when he regained his senses. When he recalled the words Duan Lingtian had said to Yuan Kuang, it was not difficult for him to guess the reason why he was sent out. It was so that Ji Yuli would not be implicated in the matter. If he was also inside Duan Lingtian's territory when Yuan Kuang died, he would definitely be implicated. No one would believe him at all even if he swore to the high heavens that he did not kill him. In the 10,000 Swords territory, Duan Lingtian walked toward Yuan Kuang step by step. Thud, 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 every step of Duan Lingtian's made Yuan Kuang feel as though there was a pressure on his heart. He was extremely afraid now. His breathing had quickened. What are you trying to do? Yuan Kuang held onto Yuan Hong's body as he stepped back with a fearful expression on his face when he saw Duan Lingtian continued making his way toward him. What else is there to do? I'm going to kill you, of course. Duan Lingtian replied nonchalantly as though he was speaking about some unimportant matter. No, you can't do that. If you kill me, you'll be violating the sect's rules. The fire worship sect won't let you go. Yuan Kuang said with a trembling voice as his eyes widened in terror. Haven't I already violated the rules when I killed your brother? Duan Lingtian sneered when he heard Yuan Kuang's words. He said disdainfully, to the fire worship sect, there's no difference if I kill Yuan Hong or if I kill both of you. Swish. Horror dawned on Yuan Kuang again when he heard Duan Lingtian's words. He knew he was in grave danger at this moment. Various expressions flitted across Yuan Kuang's face when he realized he was on the brink of death. Finally, he kneeled in the air and continuously kowtowed at Duan Lingtian. Senior brother Lingtian. Senior brother Lingtian, please forgive me. I'm willing to apologize to senior brother Ji Yuli. If you let me live, senior brother Ji Yuli can do anything he wants to me to seek revenge. I haven't lived long enough, I'm not willing to die. I really don't want to die. Senior brother Lingtian, if you're willing to let me go, I'll stand witness and say that my brother, Yuan Hong, was the one who wanted to kill you, and you merely acted out of self-defense. It serves him right for dying. As long as I'm willing to become your witness, you won't be violating the fire worship sect's rule. In order to survive, Yuan Kuang did not even hesitate to betray his brother. Although Yuan Hong wanted to kill Duan Lingtian, due to his fear of the fire worship sect's rules, it did not cross his mind to kill him at all. He merely planned to beat Duan Lingtian up so badly that he would wish for death instead. A hint of disgust flashed in the depth of Duan Lingtian's eyes when he heard Yuan Kuang's words. When Yuan Hong attacked him earlier, although he did not show any mercy, there was no killing intent at all. It was obvious Yuan Hong had no plans of killing him. Naturally, Duan Lingtian knew it was not because Yuan Hong was merciful. He was just afraid of violating the fire worship sect's rule instead. Although Yuan Hong was afraid of the fire worship sect's rule, it did not mean Duan Lingtian was afraid as well. The moment Duan Lingtian saw the Yuan brothers tortured and humiliated Ji Yuli, he had already sentenced them to death. Now that Yuan Hong is dead, there was only Yuan Kuang left. There are always consequences to our actions. This applies to everyone. When Duan Lingtian saw Yuan Kuang did not even hesitate to betray his brother to save his own life, Duan Lingtian no longer bothered wasting time talking to him. As soon as he finished speaking, he instantly killed Yuan Kuang. It was still as simple, straightforward, and brutal. Even Yuan Hong, who was at the early quintessential saint stage, had been killed by Duan Lingtian. Naturally, it was easy for him to kill Yuan Kuang, who was only at the intermediate exemplary saint stage. Elder Huo. After killing the Yuan brothers, Duan Lingtian immediately called out to Elder Huo. He wanted to ask Elder Huo to guide his divine consciousness so that he can locate and grab hold of their innate spiritual roots that were located in their souls. It was obvious he planned to devour both their innate spiritual roots. Currently, he was desperate to raise the level of his innate spiritual root. The Yuan brothers could only count themselves unlucky for putting their heads on the chopping board for Duan Lingtian. Naturally, the reason Duan Lingtian decided to kill them was not due to their innate spiritual roots. It was to seek revenge for Ji Yuli. The idea of devouring their innate spiritual roots only appeared in his mind when he was fighting Yuan Hong. Due to this reason, he killed Yuan Hong and risked the punishment for violating the fire worship sect's rule. Moreover, he had even killed Yuan Kuang. He has a dark green innate spiritual root. Elder Huo's divine consciousness guided Duan Lingtian's divine consciousness into Yuan Hong's soul. Dark green innate spiritual roots were the best green innate spiritual roots. It's the same as my innate spiritual root. Duan Lingtian became excited when he heard Elder Huo's words. If Yuan Hong's innate spiritual root was bad, Duan Lingtian was not sure if his innate spiritual root would improve to the blue innate spiritual root after devouring Yuan Hong's innate spiritual root. After he heard Elder Huo's words, he felt more confident. There's also Yuan Kuang's innate spiritual root. Moreover, Duan Lingtian would be able to devour 2 innate spiritual roots. After Duan Lingtian devoured Yuan Hong's innate spiritual root, his innate spiritual root underwent a huge transformation. You have a light blue innate spiritual root now. Congratulations. Elder Huo's voice rang in Duan Lingtian's ears. He was beside himself with joy when he heard Elder Huo's words. The blue innate spiritual root. He had raised the level of his innate spiritual root to blue, it was no longer green. Currently, the speed of me sensing and absorbing the heaven and earth spirit energy should be 2 times faster than before. Duan Lingtian could feel the difference as he tried to sense and absorb the heaven and earth spirit energy. It was a huge transformation that greatly satisfied Duan Lingtian. Chapter 1946. After devouring Yuan Hong's innate spiritual root, Duan Lingtian's now possessed a blue innate spiritual root. However, after he had devoured Yuan Kuang's innate spiritual root, there were no obvious changes to his innate spiritual root. Duan Lingtian was not surprised by this at all. Although Yuan Kuang had a green innate spiritual root, it was worth nothing before his blue innate spiritual root. It would undoubtedly take a long time before he could further raise the level of his blue innate spiritual root. Devouring a green innate spiritual root was akin to a drop of water in a bucket. Swoosh. With just a thought, Duan Lingtian withdrew his 10,000 swords territory, appearing before the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples. However, even when Duan Lingtian appeared before them, the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples did not look at Duan Lingtian. Instead, their attention was on the 2 bodies that were falling from the sky. Thud, thud. The 2 bodies crashed on the ground loudly, causing the scene to fall silent. While the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples were still in shock, Duan Lingtian transmitted his voice to Ji Yuli and told him about how Yang Chong, the 5th elder of the Northern Plethora sect, had come to make things difficult for him. Apart from that, Duan Lingtian also revealed his purpose of coming here today to pass the secret tactic that could nullify the soul-searching secret tactic to Ji Yuli. Junior brother Lingtian, run away now. Otherwise, you won't be able to run anymore when the enforcement elder of Vermilion Bird arrives. Ji Yuli transmitted his voice to urge Duan Lingtian to leave. His voice was laden with anxiety. In his opinion, Duan Lingtian had killed Yuan Hong and Yuan Kuang. This could be seen as a challenge to the fire worship sect's authority. For this reason, the sect would not let Duan Lingtian go. Don't worry, senior brother Ji Yuli. I have my own way to deal with this. Duan Lingtian remained calm when he heard Ji Yuli's words. He smiled confidently at Ji Yuli, causing Ji Yuli to be momentarily stunned. Where did his junior brother Lingtian get his confidence from? Killing fellow disciples in the fire worship sect was not a minor crime. Meanwhile, the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples present on the scene had also regained their senses. There was a hint of terror in their eyes as they looked at Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian's ruthlessness had left a deep impression on them. Duan Lingtian really dares to act as he wishes. He even dares to kill Yuan Kuang after killing Yuan Hong. Ruthless. He's too ruthless. I can't believe there's such a ruthless person in the Black Turtle Sanctum. From what I know, before he entered the Black Turtle Sanctum, he was already a ruthless person. Otherwise, he wouldn't have dared to offend the Black Turtle Sanctum's first Silver Flame Elder Lian by killing Yang Wu, the son of the fifth elder of Northern Plethora Sect. However, no matter how ruthless he is, he's definitely going to be sentenced to death. Killing fellow disciples is not a petty crime. He'll have to pay with this crime with his life. Many Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples whispered among themselves. All of them felt Duan Lingtian would die today. He would have to pay the price of killing the Yuan brothers with his own life. It's unfortunate he only has a yellow spiritual root. If he possesses a blue or above innate spiritual root, coupled with the fact that he has mastered 3 high-grade divine abilities, the higher-ups would only give him a minor punishment. They would not sentence him to death even if he kills a few more people. Dreams are always more beautiful than reality. Reality is mostly cruel. It has been confirmed in the Black Turtle Sanctum that Duan Lingtian has a yellow innate spiritual root. He's definitely going to die today as the yellow spiritual root. For this reason, he will definitely die today. It's such a pity that a genius who managed to comprehend and master 3 high-grade divine abilities is going to be sentenced to death. The Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples continued to whisper among themselves. Most of them felt Duan Lingtian would not be able to survive this. I wonder if Duan Lingtian is going to run away since he knows he's going to die. Although the chances of him surviving is low, if he just stays here, there's 0 chance of him surviving. If I were him, I'll risk it and run even if I know the chances of me successfully escaping isn't high. If I really manage to run away, at least I'll be able to live. Look at him, it seems like he doesn't intend to run away at all. Many Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples shifted their eyes to Duan Lingtian only to discover that he did not intend to run away at all. Duan Lingtian stood there quietly as though he was waiting for something. Soon after, a Vermilion Bird Sanctum's elder finally arrived. Elder Wu. Elder Wu. Upon seeing the Silver Flame Elder, the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples bowed at him politely and humbly. The elder was a fat old man. On top of that, he was short as well, causing him to look like a ball. His face was so fat that only a small pair of eyes could be seen. However, this fat old man's small pair of eyes radiated with vigor and were much sharper than the average person. The Vermilion Bird Sanctum's enforcement elder. Duan Lingtian could guess the old man's identity when he saw the crowd paid their respect to him. The Vermilion Bird Sanctum's enforcement elder Wu Yi found the Yuan brothers' bodies with the help of the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples. His expression turned grim immediately as his eyes shone with a terrifying light. You're Duan Lingtian. Wu Yi shifted his gaze to Duan Lingtian. When he saw how indifferent Duan Lingtian was acting, sitting cross-legged, he became furious immediately. Stand up, Wu Yi shouted after he took a deep breath. His voice had a majestic quality to it that left no room for arguments. Shivers ran up the spines of the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples present on the scene when they heard Wu Yi's shout. They were very clear that although the enforcement elder of their Vermilion Bird Sanctum appeared meek and harmless, he was actually really terrifying. Otherwise, he would not have been able to become the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's enforcement elder. Junior brother Lingtian, he's enforcement elder Wu Yi from our Vermilion Bird Sanctum. He appears meek and harmless, but that's not the case. Try to do as he says since no one knows what he's going to do. Ji Yuli immediately transmitted his voice to Duan Lingtian. His tone was laden with worry. Duan Lingtian narrowed his eyes when he heard Wu Yi shouting at him. He then stood up in a neither hurried nor slow pace and left the courtyard in the sky. When he drew close to Wu Yi, he bowed slightly and cupped his hands in front of him. Good day to you, Elder Wu Yi. You flatter me. Faced with Duan Lingtian's bow, Wu Yi's expression relaxed slightly even though his tone still sounded menacing. I'm the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's enforcement elder Wu Yi. The reason I'm here is about the deaths of the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples, Yuan Hong and Yuan Kuang. You, Duan Lingtian, a disciple from the Black Turtle Sanctum, have disregarded our fire worship sect's rule and killed both Yuan Hong and Yuan Kuang from the Vermilion Bird Sanctum. Do you admit to your crime? When Wu Yi reached the end of his sentence, his eyes narrowed as a terrifying aura began to surge out of his body. The aura that was oppressive swept out like the tempestuous storm toward Duan Lingtian. If it was any other ordinary people, they would have been petrified by Wu Yi's aura. However, Duan Lingtian remained unmoved like a mountain. It seemed like he was not affected by it at all. Upon seeing this, a hint of shock appeared in the depths of Wu Yi's eyes. Duan Lingtian looked at Qing Yan and said in a neither hurried nor slow pace, "Elder Wu Yi, if I'm not mistaken, whether I admit to my crime or not, it's not your place to decide what to do with me, right? I'm not a Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciple after all." There was a rule in the fire worship sect's 4 symbols sanctums that stated that when a disciple from whichever sanctum had committed a crime, only the enforcement elder of that particular sanctum was allowed to deal with it. The enforcement elders of the other sanctums could only deal with the disciples from their respective sanctums and had no authority to deal with disciples from the other 3 sanctums. For this reason, even if Duan Lingtian came to the Vermilion Bird Sanctum to kill somebody and broke the fire worship sect's rule, the person who had the right to judge him was the enforcement elder from the Black Turtle Sanctum. You know the rules well. Upon hearing Duan Lingtian's words, Wu Yi snorted coldly before adding on, "Before I came here, I've already sent another Silver Flame Elder from our Vermilion Bird Sanctum to invite your Black Turtle Sanctum's enforcement elder. Elder Guo Shang will be here soon." "All right." Duan Lingtian nodded his head nonchalantly. Duan Lingtian shocked everyone, including Wu Yi, when he turned around and returned to Yuan Hong's Secundus house and closed the door behind him. Duan Lingtian's voice suddenly rang in the air. "Elder Wu Yi, please let me know when Elder Guo Shang arrives." The instant Duan Lingtian's words left his mouth, it stunned the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples present on the scene. Was he not being too unyielding? The Vermilion Bird Sanctum's enforcement elder Wu Yi, on the other hand, was so enraged that his fat face began to twitch uncontrollably. His pair of small eyes shone coldly. If looks could kill, Duan Lingtian would have died many times over. Junior brother Lingtian, it could be said that Ji Yuli knew Duan Lingtian quite well. However, when he saw Duan Lingtian's stubborn attitude, he felt as though Duan Lingtian was a stranger to him. He really did not know what he was thinking. Naturally, unlike all the other Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples, Ji Yuli knew Duan Lingtian was not seeking death. In his opinion, since junior brother Lingtian dared act this way, he must have felt confident he could deal with the matter. However, Ji Yuli did not know where he got his confidence from. Meanwhile, when the Black Turtle Sanctum's enforcement elder Guo Shang was making his way to the Vermilion Bird Sanctum after receiving news of what happened, the Black Turtle Sanctum's first Silver Flame elder Lian had also received the news as well and made his way to the Vermilion Bird Sanctum as well. His expression was extremely grave. Chapter 1947. How could his expression not be grave? No matter what, Lian was the Black Turtle Sanctum's first Silver Flame elder. Only one person stood above him while there were 10,000 people below him in the Black Turtle Sanctum. Even in the fire worship sect's 4 symbols sanctums, he could be considered as someone with a high position. However, someone like him was continuously provoked by a disciple who had just entered the Black Turtle Sanctum in the fire worship sect. At the very least, it was a blatant provocation in Lian's eyes. He felt greatly humiliated by this. The first time, that new disciple had killed his best friend's son in front of him. The second time, that new disciple had killed his soon-to-be direct disciple. Now, for the third time, that new disciple killed his grand disciple. How could he possibly tolerate this? Especially when he found out his grand disciple had fought with Duan Lingtian to avenge him. Lian was extremely furious now. "Duan Lingtian, how dare you kill Yuan Hong and his brother? I really would like to see how you're going to save your lowly life this time around." When Lian made his way to the Vermilion Bird Sanctum, his expression was grave, and his eyes shone coldly as well. In his opinion, Duan Lingtian was going to die this time. Put aside the fact that Yuan Hong might not even intend to kill him, even if he did, Duan Lingtian's action could be considered as self-defense. However, what about Yuan Hong's younger brother? Based on the news he heard, Yuan Hong's brother did not make a move on Duan Lingtian at all. Duan Lingtian's action of killing Yuan Kuang was akin to killing an innocent fellow sect disciple. According to the fire worship sect's rules, Duan Lingtian would need to pay with his life for killing Yuan Kuang. Soon after, Lian caught up to Guo Shang. His eyes flashed as he asked, "Elder Guo Shang, I don't think you'll find Duan Lingtian not guilty like before, right?" "Humph, When Guo Shanghu had rushed over when he heard about the matter of Duan Lingtian killing 2 Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples heard Li An's words, his expression turned grim immediately. He said coldly, "Elder Lian, are you doubting the fairness of my previous verdict? If you feel my verdict is unfair, why haven't you lodged a complaint to Lord Sanctum Leader?" When he reached the end of his sentence, his voice turned colder, causing the temperature in the surroundings to drop a few degrees. "I just wanted to remind you that some people might not have a good reason to kill every single time, Elder Guo Shang. Today, even if Duan Lingtian killed Yuan Hong out of self-defense, he should still be found guilty and be sentenced to death for killing Yuan Kuang." Li Yan replied calmly. When he reached the end of his sentence, his tone turned slightly colder as well. "Elder Li Yan, as the Black Turtle Sanctum's enforcement elder, I know my job very well. There's no need for you to teach me how to do my job." Guo Shang responded in a deep voice. When he spoke, he did not show any respect to Li Yan at all. Humph. Li Yan's expression turned grim as a killing intent flashed in the depths of his eyes when he saw how disrespectful Guo Shang was. Subsequently, with just a flash, Li Yan overtook Guo Shang as he increased his speed and made his way to the residence of the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples. At the residence of the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples, more and more Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples came out of their residences. It was obvious they were all here to watch the show. So many people came to watch to the point that the sky above the residence of the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples was packed with people. There were at least a few thousands of people there. These people followed the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's enforcement elder Wu Yi as they surrounded a Secundus house and pointed at it. Up until now, the door remained shut. That Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple, Duan Lingtian, is actually so bold. He has killed someone, and yet, he still dares to act so arrogantly in front of our Vermilion Bird Sanctum's enforcement elder Wu Yi. He even dares to enter Yuan Hong's house to rest in front of elder Wu Yi. Duan Lingtian is really too audacious. Does he really think that the rules of the fire worship sect are flexible? No matter what he does, he's going to die anyway. Who knows, all these daring actions of his is just a last attempt for him to act as he wants. You have a point. I think he's only acting like that because he knows there's no way out for him. There's nothing left for him to be afraid of. The group of Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples whispered among themselves. They were all certain Duan Lingtian was going to be sentenced to death. Humph. If it wasn't for the fire worship sect's 4 symbols sanctums, rules that state that enforcement elders from each sect doesn't have jurisdiction over disciples from other sanctums, how could Duan Lingtian possibly survive up until now? Can't you see how dark Elder Wu's expression is right now? It's obvious he's infuriated by Duan Lingtian. The Black Turtle Sanctum's enforcement elder should be arriving soon. When he arrives, Duan Lingtian will probably have to pay with his life for killing the Yuan brothers. I would really like to see if Duan Lingtian would still be as arrogant as he is now when the time comes. The Vermilion Bird Sanctum's enforcement elder Wu Yi's expression turned even grimmer as the disciples in the surroundings carried on with their discussion. Despite how fat his face was, one could very clearly see the grim expression on his face. One could clearly tell he was extremely furious. Ever since Wu Yi became the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's enforcement elder, this was his first time encountering such an arrogant fire worship sect's disciple. After he had killed his fellow disciples, he had acted as though nothing had happened and even ignored him, a Vermilion Bird Sanctum's elder. After this is over, I'll look for Lord Sanctum Leader and ask if he can look for the Lord Hall Master of the Saint Lands Enforcement Hall to revise some of the rules in the fire worship sect. To think that a disciple from another sanctum came to kill in the Vermilion Bird Sanctum, and I, the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's enforcement elder, can't even do anything to seek justice for the dead. How frustrating, Wu Yi thought to himself. Naturally, this was not his first time encountering disciples from other sanctum who came here looking for trouble. However, they were as afraid as mice when they saw him even though he had no jurisdiction over them. To be honest, he enjoyed their fear of him. However, today, the way Duan Lingtian ignored him frustrated him greatly since he could not enjoy the fear that most disciples would feel when they see him. An awe-inspiring Vermilion Bird Sanctum's enforcement elder could only stare at this disciple from another sanctum who killed his fellow disciples as he acted as he pleased, and there was nothing he could do at all. He was extremely frustrated, dissatisfied, and angry. This was the emotions that the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's enforcement elder Wu Yi was feeling right now. Junior brother Lingtian, Ji Yuli was, naturally, standing among the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples. A bitter smile appeared on his face as he looked at the Secundus house that used to belong to Yuan Hong. Although Ji Yuli had faith in Duan Lingtian, the current situation did not seem like it was in Duan Lingtian's favor at all. Ji Yuli, he's the reason Duan Lingtian killed the Yuan brothers. Now that you mentioned it, he's quite pitiful as well. He's often bullied by the Yuan brothers. Now that the Yuan brothers are dead, it can be considered as him being freed from the devil's grasp. He might be free, but his junior brother is going to be sentenced to death today. Duan Lingtian's definitely going to be sentenced to death when the Black Turtle Sanctum's enforcement elder arrives. Ji Yuli was also the topic of discussion among many Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples. Upon hearing their words, Ji Yuli became even more worried about Duan Lingtian's safety. It might be noisy outside, but the Secundus house that used to belong to Yuan Hong was currently vacant. Naturally, it was not really vacant. The Seven Treasures exquisite pagoda that was only as large as a speck of dust rested in an inconspicuous corner in the house. A person was sitting cross-legged in the fourth level of the Seven Treasures exquisite pagoda. How fast? With my current cultivation speed, it'll only take me 5 months at most for me to make a breakthrough even if I cultivate in the Secundus house. 5 months inside the Seven Treasures exquisite pagoda is only equivalent to 2 weeks outside. In other words, I'll be able to successfully break through to the Mastery Divine Saint stage even if I cultivate outside. Duan Lingtian suddenly opened his eyes. There was a pleasantly surprised expression on his face. The reason he had entered to Secundus house was to check on his current cultivation speed. After all, his innate spiritual root was no longer green but blue. Although my blue innate spiritual root is only light blue at this moment, with the help of the time flow on the fourth level of the Seven Treasures exquisite pagoda, my cultivation speed is almost on par with someone who possesses a light indigo innate spiritual root. Not only that, but if I cultivate in the Secundus house, coupled with the benefits from the fourth level of the Seven Treasures exquisite pagoda, my cultivation environment is similar to that of a Primus house. If I can obtain a Primus house, my cultivation speed is going to be even faster. The moment Duan Lingtian thought of this, he became extremely excited. It should be about time now, right? Elder Guo Shang should be arriving soon, Duan Lingtian thought to himself as he left the Seven Treasures exquisite pagoda and put it away. Then, he sat cross-legged on the wooden bed in the Secundus house and shut his eyes to attain mental composure. Meanwhile, a figure flying rapidly soared outside the sky of the Secundus house. In just a blink of an eye, the figure appeared next to the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's enforcement elder Wu Yi. Elder Wu Yi, the person greeted Wu Yi. Elder Lian, Wu Yi greeted in response. However, he did not fawn over him. He was the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's enforcement elder after all, and his strength was in no way inferior to the Black Turtle Sanctum's enforcement elder Guo Shang. Although he was not as powerful as Lian, he was not much weaker than him as well. For this reason, he had acted very casually in front of Lian. It's Elder Lian, the Black Turtle Sanctum's first Silver Flame Elder Lian. Lian's appearance instant garnered the attention of many Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples. Lian took a look around his surroundings, but he did not see Duan Lingtian. He instantly asked Wu Yi with a frown, "Where's Duan Lingtian?" Chapter 1948. Upon hearing Lian's question, if it was not for the fact that he knew about the huge enmity between Lian and Duan Lingtian, Wu Yi would have shouted, "Are all disciples from the Black Turtle Sanctum so arrogant? To think that he actually dared to ignore the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's enforcement elder. How audacious of him! He's inside the Secundus house that used to belong to Yuan Hong. He told me to inform him when the Black Turtle Sanctum's enforcement elder Guo Shang has arrived." Wu Yi's eyes shone with killing intent when he reached the end of his sentence. His fat face had a dark expression, it was obvious he was extremely furious. What? Upon hearing Wu Yi's words, Lian's expression turned grave immediately. Lian shouted immediately, "Who does he think he is? How could someone who has violated the sect's rules dare to act so wantonly?" The moment his words left his mouth, before Wu Yi and the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples present realized what was going on, Lian had made his move as fast as a bolt of lightning. Bang! He pushed his hand out and a vast energy in the shape of a palm appeared and soared through the air before it crashed on the Secundus house with a thunderous noise. Rumble! As the thunderous noise sounded, the Secundus house collapsed into a pile of rubble, causing dust to fly up into the air. It sent shivers running up the spines of people watching from afar. How ruthless! Upon seeing this, the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples shuddered in their hearts. They did not expect the Black Turtle Sanctum's first Silver Flame Elder Lian would be so ruthless, destroying one of the Secundus houses and their Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples' residence as soon as he made his move. Elder Lian. Wu Yi's expression turned ugly as he looked at Lian angrily. Whether it was the fact that Lian had destroyed the Secundus house and their Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples' residence or the fact that he had taken matters into his own hands, it had made Wu Yi extremely displeased. He was already dissatisfied with the way Duan Lingtian acted, but it did not cross his mind that Lian would take matters into his own hands as well. Even as the enforcement elder of the Vermilion Bird Sanctum, Wu Yi was just like other people. He would also be infuriated by various things. However, he would always try to maintain his composure. In the fire worship sect, everything had to be done according to the rules. This was Wu Yi's principle. Don't worry, I didn't kill him, Lian said nonchalantly. Although he could not wait to tear Duan Lingtian into 1,000 pieces, he had held back his impulse and did not take matters into his own hands and kill Duan Lingtian in front of the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's enforcement elder. He had only made a move because he did not want Duan Lingtian to feel comfortable. In his opinion, Duan Lingtian had only dared to act so arrogantly because he knew he would die. He probably wanted to enjoy his last moments doing as he pleased. The more Duan Lingtian wanted to enjoy something, the more he would refuse to let him do so. Duan Lingtian wanted to rest in the house. He would just destroy the house and see how he was going to rest. The people saw some movements in the place where the Secundus house had collapsed into a pile of rubble before a furious voice rang in the air. Lian, boom. Then, another loud explosion sounded again as the pile of rubble exploded. A figure soared up into the air. It was none other than Duan Lingtian. His expression was extremely grave. Since Duan Lingtian had come out from the ruins of the house, he was completely covered in dust. Duan Lingtian, how dare you address me by my name as soon as you see me? Do you know you've violated the rule of disrespecting your elders? Lian asked coldly with a hint of pleasure in his eyes when he saw Duan Lingtian's wretched appearance. Humph. Duan Lingtian snorted when he heard his words. He retorted, if I'm not mistaken, there's also a rule in the fire worship sect that states that elders in the sect are not allowed to bully the young ones using their power. You've stooped so low as to bully the young ones, but you still expect me to respect you. Are you insane or an idiot? He was comfortably resting in the house when it was destroyed by Lian. It was only natural he was furious. When he heard Lian accusing him of disrespecting his elders, he could no longer hold back. He had abused his authority and power by bullying juniors, but he still had the audacity to say Duan Lingtian had disrespected him. How funny. Now that Duan Lingtian had spat out all these words, he felt much more at ease. It was Lian's turn to feel furious. Idiot. The moment Duan Lingtian's words left his mouth, the entire scene fell silent. Then, the disciples of the Vermilion Bird Sanctum shifted their attention to him. Their gazes were a mix of shock, disbelief, and admiration. When Duan Lingtian had called Lian an idiot in a cool manner, the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples present on the scene had different feelings. Some felt he was just seeking death. Some felt Duan Lingtian was acting recklessly. Since he knew he was going to die anyway, he might as well enjoy himself. There were also some people who admired Duan Lingtian regardless of the reason why he dared to act so boldly. Duan Lingtian, why you're seeking death? When Lian looked at Duan Lingtian, a terrifying killing intent rose from his body as his eyes shone coldly. Currently, he felt as though his heart was going to explode out of anger. Ever since he became an elder in the fire worship sect, was there anyone who dared to call him an idiot to his face? Duan Lingtian was just an ordinary Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple and a commoner who only had a yellow innate spiritual root. How dare he called him an idiot? His expression seemed as though he had eaten a fly. What, are you throwing a tantrum out of humiliation, Elder Lian? Duan Lingtian was pleased when he saw how furious Lian was. He said indifferently, I don't think I've said anything wrong. Why don't we ask Elder Wu Yi for his opinion? As the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's enforcement elder, I'm sure he knows the fire worship sect's rules better than us. Should we let him decide who provoked who first, and who is in the wrong? When Duan Lingtian finished talking, Lian was so furious he was rendered speechless. After all, he was the one who made the first move. I'm the type of person who returns a favor by tenfold. Duan Lingtian said when he saw Lian keeping quiet, I, Duan Lingtian, have a clear conscience and wouldn't do anything shameless. Since I'm in the fire worship sect, it's only natural for me to obediently follow the rules of the sect. The first half of Duan Lingtian's sentence garnered him many secret thumbs up from the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples. However, when they heard the latter part of his sentence, their expressions changed into a weird one instead. Did Duan Lingtian just say he obediently followed the rules of the fire worship sect? What a joke! When he killed Yuan Hong and Yuan Kuang, was he following the rules of the fire worship sect? For this reason, many of them snorted when they heard the latter part of his sentence. Duan Lingtian is really too shameless. To think he's able to say such words out loud. Indeed, if he obeys the fire worship sect's rule, he wouldn't have killed Yuan Hong and Yuan Kuang in the first place. If it's just Yuan Hong, we could say he did it out of self-defense. However, what about Yuan Kuang? From the beginning until the end, Yuan Kuang did not make a move at all, but he still killed him. It's okay for other people to say these words, but for Duan Lingtian to say this, it sounds like the biggest joke in the world. Look at him, it seems like he's venting everything now. He must know he doesn't have much time left now. Since the Black Turtle Sanctum's elder Lian has arrived, I'm sure the Black Turtle Sanctum's enforcement elder Guoshang is not far behind. Most of the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples glanced at Duan Lingtian before shaking their heads. They all thought Duan Lingtian knew he would not be able to live long, and that was why he was acting like that. Humph, I can't be bothered to talk to you. No matter what, you're going to die anyway. Lian kept quiet after he said this. It was as though he knew he would not be able to win against Duan Lingtian verbally, so he only snorted. He stood quietly at the side with his eyes closed to attain mental composure as he waited for the arrival of the Black Turtle Sanctum's enforcement elder Guoshang. Duan Lingtian no longer continued talking and looked away from Lian when he saw that Lian had finally kept quiet. The scene soon fell silent as well as everyone waited for the arrival of the Black Turtle Sanctum's enforcement elder Guoshang. After a span of a few breaths, whoosh, a faint sound reverberated in the air, causing everyone to look at the source of the noise. An old figure was flying toward them at an extremely fast speed. Soon after, the figure descended beside the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's enforcement elder Wu Yi and showed himself. The person wore the uniform of a Black Turtle Sanctum's Silver Flame elder. Is he the Black Turtle Sanctum's enforcement elder Guoshang? The Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples shifted their gaze to the newcomer. Elder Guoshang. Duan Lingtian looked at him with narrowed eyes. It seemed as though he was not afraid even though Guoshang had shown up. In the fire worship sect's four symbol sanctums, as a Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple, Guoshang the Black Turtle Sanctum's enforcement elder had his life in his hands. Elder Guoshang. When Wu Yi saw Guoshang had arrived, his eyes brightened immediately as though he had just seen his savior. Elder Guoshang, you came just in time. You can come to a decision and sentence Duan Lingtian to death for killing the Yuan brothers. Lian said to Guoshang quickly in a commanding tone. Lian was too eager to see Duan Lingtian die, he was not aware that he had intervened with someone else's duty. Upon hearing Lian's words, everyone, even Lian who finally realized his mistake, could not help but frown. Guoshang's expression turned grave immediately. Then, he said to Lian without being polite, Elder Lian, it's not up to you to tell me how to do my work. Chapter 1949, Chapter 1950, The Truth Will Prove Everything. Although this was not the first time Lian was treated discourteously by Guoshang, he was still furious after being humiliated by him in front of so many people. Naturally, he did not show his rage outwardly since it was not convenient nor wise for him to do so now. What if Guoshang gave a verdict in favor of Duan Lingtian just to spite him? Although everyone with good judgment knew Duan Lingtian was going to die according to the fire worship sect's rules, there might be some unforeseen circumstances. Who knew if Guoshang was on Duan Lingtian's side? In order to witness Duan Lingtian being sentenced to death, Lian chose to endure the humiliation for the time being. Based on this, one could see how much Lian wanted Duan Lingtian to die. Duan Lingtian. Guoshang turned away from Lian to look at Duan Lingtian. His eyes gleamed coldly as he asked, I heard that you killed 2 Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples. Everyone turned to look at Duan Lingtian as Guoshang questioned him. Under the watchful eyes of the others, Duan Lingtian replied truthfully, yes. Why? Guoshang asked again. His voice seemed to have turned colder compared to before. Yuan Hong wanted to kill me, so it's out of self-defense that I killed him. Duan Lingtian answered. As for Yuan Kuang, although he did not make a move on me, he had threatened me with my friend's life to affect the battle between Yuan Hong and I. In my opinion, he was Yuan Hong's accomplice and wanted me dead as well. I killed him out of self-defense as well. Duan Lingtian spoke articulately as though he had been practicing them beforehand. The moment Duan Lingtian's words left his mouth, the scene fell silent again. The Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples looked at each other in bewilderment. After a while, many of them began to whisper among themselves. Duan Lingtian is just too shameless, right? He's indeed shameless. It can be considered as self-defense when he killed Yuan Hong, but Yuan Kuang did not make a move at all. But he still dares to say that he killed Yuan Kuang out of self-defense as well. How ludicrous. Does he really think that the Black Turtle Sanctum's enforcement elder is so easily fooled and believes everything he says? In my opinion, not only does he think the Black Turtle Sanctum's enforcement elder is easily fooled, but he even disregards the existence of our Vermilion Bird Sanctum's enforcement elder. The Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples were whispering in the beginning, but their voices gradually turned louder as they continued talking. After the Black Turtle Sanctum's enforcement elder Guo Shang heard the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples' words, his expression turned grim immediately. Elder Guo Shang, don't listen to the nonsense Duan Lingtian spouts. I've already more or less gotten to the bottom of the matter. Yuan Hong indeed snuck an attack on him, but it's uncertain if he intended to kill Duan Lingtian. At the same time, the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's enforcement elder Wu Yi looked at Guo Shang and chimed in, now, let's just assume Yuan Hong wanted to kill Duan Lingtian and was killed out of self-defense. However, according to my investigation, Yuan Kuang did not threaten his friend's life at all. This is not hard to ascertain. We can just ask his friend to swear on the lightning penalty oath, and the truth will come to light. I believe at that time we'll be able to determine if Yuan Kuang was using him to affect the battle between Duan Lingtian and Yuan Hong. When Wu Yi reached the end of his sentence, he looked at the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples before his eyes landed on Ji Yuli. Upon hearing Wu Yi's words, horror dawned on Ji Yuli when he sensed Wu Yi's gaze on him. He was not afraid of death. If he could use his own death in exchange for his junior brother Lingtian's life, he was more than willing to do so. However, even if he swore on the lightning penalty oath according to Wu Yi's request, not only would he die, but he would get his junior brother in trouble as well. At that time, it would be confirmed that Duan Lingtian did not kill Yuan Kuang out of self-defense. According to the fire worship sect's rule, the punishment for killing fellow disciples was death. Elder Wu Yi, there's no need for that. Duan Lingtian said in a timely manner as soon as everyone, including the Black Turtle Sanctum's enforcement elder Guo Shang, had shifted their attention to Ji Yuli. He immediately stopped Wu Yi the moment he opened his mouth. Why, do you admit to killing a fellow disciple for no good reason? Wu Yi shifted his eyes from Ji Yuli to Duan Lingtian and smirked coldly as soon as he heard him speak. Standing by the side, Lian looked at Duan Lingtian with cold eyes as a cruel smile appeared on his face. It was as though he could already see Duan Lingtian being sentenced to death. Elder Wu Yi, I don't admit to these accusations. Duan Lingtian shook his head. Duan Lingtian, if you're not going to admit to it, then let your friend swear on the lightning penalty oath as Elder Wu Yi has suggested. At that time, the truth will come to light. Guo Shang was furious as well at this moment. Elder Guo Shang, please take it easy. Duan Lingtian shook his head again before sending a voice transmission to Guo Shang. It caused Guo Shang to widen his eyes in disbelief. A skeptical expression appeared on his face as well. In the end, he turned to look at the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's enforcement elder Wu Yi before he transmitted his voice to him. An expression of shock and disbelief appeared on Wu Yi's face immediately. Similar to Guo Shang, there was a hint of skepticism in his expression as well. Just when everyone, including Lian, realized that something was not right with these two enforcement elders' expressions. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. The air vibrated for a moment as a wave of scorching vast flame energy burst out of the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's enforcement elder Wu Yi, forming his flame territory. The flame territory was like a gigantic beast that swallowed Wu Yi, Guo Shang, and Duan Lingtian. Soon after, only a big flaming ball with a 100 meters diameter was all everyone could see. The big flaming ball hovered in the air, hiding what was happening inside from everyone. What's Wu Yi doing? Lian could not help but frown when he saw this. Even if they wanted to kill Duan Lingtian, they would have to announce the verdict and officially sentence him to death first, right? Somehow, an ominous feeling rose in Lian's heart. Not only that, but it was getting stronger as time went by. At this instant, Lian even thought of breaking into Wu Yi's territory to see what he and Guoshang were doing. However, he decided to curb his impulse in the end. Naturally, Lian was more than capable of doing that, but the consequences were not something he could bear. If Wu Yi and Guoshang jointly lodged a complaint against him at the St. Lan's Enforcement Hall, he would not get away scot-free even if he was the Black Turtle Sanctum's first Silver Flame Elder. As the four Symbols Sanctums, Enforcement Elders, Wu Yi and Guoshang were directly under the jurisdiction of the St. Lan's Enforcement Hall. What's Elder Wu Yi and Elder Guoshang trying to do? Are they killing Duan Lingtian now? Even if they're going to kill Duan Lingtian, shouldn't they officially sentence him to death first? Perhaps, Duan Lingtian's arrogance has enraged the two Enforcement Elders. That's probably why they did not bother with officially announcing the verdict. It's possible. As the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples discussed among themselves, most of them felt that Wu Yi cast his flame territory and blocked their sight was to kill Duan Lingtian. Even Ji Yuli felt that way as well. At this moment, colors drained from Ji Yuli's face. He clenched his hands as his body began to tremble unconsciously. At this moment, he hated himself to the core. He hated himself for being weak and not being able to help. The appearance of the flame territory seemed to have separated them into two worlds. Outside of the flame territory, most people felt that Duan Lingtian was going to be killed. However, inside the flame territory, Duan Lingtian was getting along very well with the two great enforcement elders. Whoosh, whoosh, Guoshang and Wu Yi each took out a transparent pearl. It was the spiritual pearl used to test one's innate spiritual root. This was the reason Wu Yi had consolidated his territory to block everyone's view. As Wu Yi passed the spiritual pearl to Duan Lingtian, his eyes shone coldly as he threatened, "Duan Lingtian, if you dare to deceive Elder Guoshang and me, I'll let you know how it feels like to be better off dead than alive before you die." Although Guoshang remained silent, the sharp gaze he used to look at Duan Lingtian made his thoughts obvious. The truth will prove me right. After taking the spiritual pearls from the two enforcement elders in each of his hands, he waited quietly. Usually, it would take a span of 10 breaths before the spiritual pearls would show any signs of a reaction. Earlier, Duan Lingtian had dropped news that was equivalent to a nuclear bomb to Guoshang. He had told him he possessed a blue innate spiritual talent. As the Black Turtle Sanctum's enforcement elder, Guoshang did not have any interactions with Duan Lingtian before prior to Ji Yulong's death 10 days ago. Through that incident, he had learned a little about Duan Lingtian and how he possessed a yellow innate spiritual root. At that time, Guoshang was baffled. Where did this Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple who only possessed a yellow innate spiritual root found the courage to oppose the Black Turtle Sanctum's first Silver Flame Elder Lian? Today, Duan Lingtian suddenly transmitted his voice to him and told him that he possessed the blue innate spiritual root instead of a yellow innate spiritual root. In the fire worship sect, martial geniuses with blue innate spiritual roots were always treasured to the point where they were given privileges that ordinary disciples did not have. This included the killing of fellow disciples. 10 days ago, why was Ji Yulong so bold as to attempt to kill Duan Lingtian? It was because he was a martial genius with a blue innate spiritual root. The fire worship sect who thirsted for geniuses would not sentence him to death because of this. Chapter 1950, Chapter 1951, The Fire Worship Sect's Unspoken Rule. Finally, after a span of 10 breaths had passed, the two spiritual pearls in Duan Lingtian's hands began to shine with a blue light, announcing to the world his innate spiritual root. He really has a blue innate spiritual root. Wu Yi's eyes widened. Previously, he did not believe that Duan Lingtian possessed a blue innate spiritual root since he had heard news from the Black Turtle Sanctum that Duan Lingtian had a yellow innate spiritual root. However, now that he had seen them with his own eyes, he had no choice but to believe them. Blue innate spiritual roots. Having seen the results of the two spiritual pearls in Duan Lingtian's hands, Guoshang was at a loss as well. When he regained his senses, he inwardly cursed the Black Turtle Sanctum's bronze flame elder who tested Duan Lingtian's innate spiritual root back then. He had actually mistaken a martial Dao prodigy with a blue innate spiritual root as a mediocre person with yellow innate spiritual root. Not only did that elder sabotage the progress of this martial Dao prodigy, but he was even pushing him away from the fire worship sect. Duan Lingtian, why don't you accept me as your master and join the Vermilion Bird Sanctum instead? Wu Yi looked at Duan Lingtian with narrowed eyes with a hint of hope. He revealed a smile that he thought looked kind. Presently, he seemed to have forgotten his displeasure with Duan Lingtian. As soon as he spoke again, he was asking Duan Lingtian to become his disciple. In the fire worship sect, a martial Tao prodigy with blue spiritual roots had always been fought over by silver flame elders to be taken in as a disciple. As a silver flame elder in the Vermilion Bird Sanctum, Wu Yi was, naturally, not an exception. There's nothing left for you in the Black Turtle Sanctum, you've already offended that petty Lian. You're only looking for trouble if you continue to stay in the Black Turtle Sanctum. If you're willing to accept me as your master, I'll ask the Lord Sanctum leader of Vermilion Bird Sanctum to speak with the Lord Sanctum leader of Black Turtle Sanctum and bring you over from the Black Turtle Sanctum. Wu Yi's voice contained a hint of urgency when he spoke. While Duan Lingtian was in a dilemma since he intended to refuse Wu Yi's offer, Guo Shang immediately turned to look at Wu Yi and cursed, "Bullshit. Duan Lingtian is a martial Tao prodigy from the Black Turtle Sanctum. How dare you try and steal him away in front of me? Do you think I'm dead? Guo Shang, how can you say that?" Wu Yi was slightly unhappy when he heard Guo Shang's words. He said with a straight face, "Currently, there's no one in the Four Symbols Sanctums who doesn't know about Duan Lingtian's situation in the Black Turtle Sanctum. If Duan Lingtian continues to stay in the Black Turtle Sanctum, who knows when he'll be killed by Lian. It's not like you don't know Lian. He's a ruthless person who would use all kinds of methods just to achieve his goals. In the past, he thought Duan Lingtian is merely someone mediocre with a yellow innate spiritual root. That's why he's taking his own sweet time to deal with him. However, if he discovers that Duan Lingtian possesses a blue spiritual root, he would definitely do everything in his power to get rid of Duan Lingtian. This was one of the reasons Wu Yi had consolidated his flame territory to block everyone's sight. If Lian discovered that Duan Lingtian possessed a blue innate spiritual root, he was afraid Lian would kill this martial Tao prodigy in the cradle. Therefore, I think it's best for Duan Lingtian to come to the Vermilion Bird Sanctum. It's too dangerous for him to continue staying in the Black Turtle Sanctum. After all, Lian will learn about his blue innate spiritual root sooner or later, Wu Yi said. After listening to Wu Yi, various expressions flitted across Guo Shang's face. Elder Guo Shang, I know you also intend on taking Duan Lingtian as your disciple. The reason you didn't say anything is due to the fact that you know that you can't protect him from Lian. Let him go. Let him join the Vermilion Bird Sanctum. Lian won't dare to act as he pleases in the Vermilion Bird Sanctum. Wu Yi advised Guo Shang. Humph. Guo Shang sneered. Although I can't guarantee I can protect Duan Lingtian, it doesn't mean there's no one in the Black Turtle Sanctum who can protect him. You. Upon hearing Guo Shang's words, Wu Yi's eyes widened in surprise as he asked, you plan to introduce Duan Lingtian to the Sanctum leader of the Black Turtle Sanctum? That's right. Guo Shang nodded. Elder Guo Shang. Wu Yi became anxious when he saw how serious Guo Shang was. He was really unwilling to let such a talented person slip through his fingers. Please consider my age and the fact that I still don't have a decent direct disciple. Give Duan Lingtian to me. I, Wu Yi, will owe you a favor. I'll definitely remember this favor. Duan Lingtian was rendered speechless as he watched the scene unfolding before him. Wu Yi did not even ask for his opinion from the beginning until the end. Guo Shang, who was getting annoyed by how persistent Wu Yi was, saw how speechless Duan Lingtian was, and his eyes brightened up immediately. He quickly said, Elder Wu Yi, there's no point in telling me all this. If Duan Lingtian isn't willing to stay in the Vermilion Bird Sanctum, are you going to tie him up here? In my opinion, it's best if you ask him what he wants instead of trying to persuade me. You're doing things the wrong way. With these words, Guo Shang instantly pushed the problem, Wu Yi, to Duan Lingtian. When Wu Yi turned to look at him, Duan Lingtian had an apologetic expression on his face as he said, Elder Wu Yi, I'm sorry, I wish to stay in the Black Turtle Sanctum to master the Black Turtle Sanctum's treasured divine ability, the Black Turtle's Barrier. The Black Turtle's Barrier was the only reason Duan Lingtian was staying in the Black Turtle Sanctum. The only thing he was lacking now was a high-grade defensive divine ability. As the Fire Worship Sect's #1 defensive divine ability, the Black Turtle's Barrier was undoubtedly the most suitable defensive divine ability for him. Right, I almost forgot that Duan Lingtian is also very talented in mastering divine abilities. You've already mastered 3 high-grade divine abilities, Guo Shang immediately said before Wu Yi could speak. He looked at Wu Yi and continued to say with a smile, Elder Wu Yi, if I'm not mistaken, the treasured divine ability of the Vermilion Bird Sanctum doesn't seem to be stronger than the high-grade movement divine ability that Duan Lingtian has mastered. You should just forget about getting Duan Lingtian to join the Vermilion Bird Sanctum. He's not going to join your sanctum. Wu Yi's expression turned stiff when he looked at Duan Lingtian's determined gaze. He sighed. Fine, fine. Eventually, Wu Yi waved his hands helplessly, looking like a deflated balloon. It seemed as though he had aged a few decades. Elder Wu Yi, the most important matter now is to resolve the crisis Duan Lingtian is currently facing. Guo Shang said as his expression turned solemn. Wu Yi regained his senses when he heard Guo Shang's words, and his expression turned solemn as well. Since Duan Lingtian possesses a blue innate spiritual root, according to the unspoken rules of the fire worship sect, the crime he has committed is not that big a deal. However, we still need to put on a show and punish him. Otherwise, it would be hard to deal with the others. Wu Yi and Guo Shang looked at each other before they reached a mutual agreement. Unspoken rule. The corner of Duan Lingtian's lips twitched when he heard Wu Yi's words. Duan Lingtian knew the fire worship sect truly appreciated talented geniuses and would not sentence him to death for killing the Yuan brothers since he possessed a blue innate spiritual root. However, he did not know there really was an unspoken rule. Outside the flame territory, as time continued to pass, Lian began to feel more and more uneasy. Even his face was pale. It hasn't ended. Why do I feel like something's wrong? It shouldn't take that long if the two enforcement elders want to kill Duan Lingtian. Are there any changes? Changes? What could change? Many Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples also felt that something was wrong, but they did not know what was wrong. Junior brother Lingtian, a glimmer of hope could be seen in the depths of Ji Yuli's eyes. Wah! Finally, under everyone's watchful eyes, the flame territory that blocked everyone's sight disappeared, revealing three figures. When they saw Duan Lingtian whom they thought had been killed standing there unharmed, the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples were baffled. After such a long time, the two enforcement elders did not kill Duan Lingtian. Since they did not kill him, what were they doing for such a long time? Li An's eyes flashed as he looked at the two enforcement elders and asked in a deep voice, Elder Wu Yi, Elder Guo Shang, what were you doing earlier? Although he had spoken clearly, both Wu Yi and Guo Shang ignored him. This caused Li An's expression to turn extremely dark. Junior brother Lingtian, you, at the same time, Ji Yuli could not help but transmit his voice to Duan Lingtian. He did not understand what had happened. Senior brother Ji Yuli, just watch what happens next. Duan Lingtian interrupted Ji Yuli's voice transmission. When he spoke, he sounded calm. Ji Yuli nodded when he heard Duan Lingtian's words. He quickly shifted his attention back to the Black Turtle Sanctum's enforcement elder Guo Shang. The judgment regarding Duan Lingtian depended entirely on Elder Guo Shang. Ahem. Most people's attention was on Guo Shang when the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's enforcement elder Wu Yi suddenly cleared his throat. After he successfully captured everyone's attention, Wu Yi said loudly, after further investigation, I've confirmed that Duan Lingtian did indeed kill the Yuan brothers out of self-defense. Duan Lingtian killed the Yuan brothers out of self-defense. Ji Yuli and the other Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples were dumbfounded. However, he killed Yuan Kuang without mercy even though he could have avoided it. Such behavior should be discouraged. Elder Guo Shang will announce the final verdict regarding Duan Lingtian's crimes. Wu Yi said. Upon hearing Wu Yi's earlier statement, Li An's expression changed dramatically. The ominous feeling he had felt earlier was not wrong. Chapter 1951, Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple, Duan Lingtian, has killed Vermilion Bird Sanctum's Yuan Hong and Yuan Kuang. Although he did it out of self-defense and has a valid reason to do so, he was too reckless when he killed Yuan Kuang. Hence, the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's enforcement elder Wu Yi and I have reached an agreement. We've decided that he would start serving in the fire worship sect's first mine for 10 years after 3 months. Under everyone's watchful eyes, the Black Turtle Sanctum's enforcement elder Guo Shang announced the verdict. Duan Lingtian would have to serve in the Four Symbols Sanctum's first mine for 10 years after 3 months. The scene fell silent as soon as Guo Shang finished speaking. Apart from Guo Shang and Wu Yi who looked calm, the only other person who was also calm was Duan Lingtian. He seemed unsurprised by the verdict as though he had already known about it beforehand. Everyone, including Lian and Ji Yuli, was shocked. Lian finally regained his senses. He looked at Guo Shang with a grim expression and cried out, Elder Guo Shang. Duan Lingtian might have killed Yuan Hong in self-defense. However, how could you say he killed Yuan Kuang in self-defense as well? Isn't it a little ridiculous for you to come to such a conclusion? Li Yan began to question Guo Shang. Guo Shang's expression instantly turned grim as he looked at Li Yan coldly. Elder Li Yan, this verdict is jointly made by Elder Wu Yi and me. If you don't think it's fair, you can lodge a complaint in the Saint Lands Enforcement Hall after a few days. At that time, my verdict should have been recorded in the Saint Lands Enforcement Hall. As for now, you have no right to question my verdict. Guo Shang said harshly and sarcastically. After all, it was Li Yan's fault he could not freely accept Duan Lingtian as his disciple. Although he might not be much weaker than Li Yan, he was still weaker. Moreover, Li Yan had a stronger support in the fire worship sect compared to him. If Duan Lingtian accepted him as his master, he might not be able to protect him. For this reason, he planned to recommend Duan Lingtian to the sanctum leader of Black Turtle Sanctum in order to ensure Duan Lingtian's safety. If Duan Lingtian became the direct disciple of the Black Turtle Sanctum, Li Yan would have tread carefully even if he intended to plot against Duan Lingtian. The sanctum leader of the Black Turtle Sanctum was a Golden Flame Elder. It was a high-ranking position among the elders in the fire worship sect. Li Yan became furious upon hearing Guo Shang's words. He stared fiercely at Guo Shang as his body trembled in anger. However, Guo Shang only ignored him. He was not afraid Li Yan would make a move against him. If Li Yan dared to do so, he was confident he could send Li Yan to the Saint Land Enforcement Hall. He would make Li Yan pay a hefty price even if he could not kill him. Elder Wu Yi, do you also agree with Elder Guo Shang's verdict? Li Yan asked after he took a deep breath to suppress his anger and turned to look at Wu Yi. Didn't Elder Guo Shang say so earlier? This is a jointly made verdict. Wu Yi responded somewhat impatiently when faced with Li Yan's question. Very well, after your verdict has been recorded in the Saint Land Enforcement Hall's scrolls, I will personally go to the Enforcement Hall to lodge a complaint about this injustice. I'll object to the verdict made today. Li Yan's expression became twisted in fury when he heard Wu Yi's words. After that, Li Yan looked at Wu Yi and Guo Shang coldly before he glanced at Duan Lingtian and sneered. Duan Lingtian, although I don't know what you did to make them bend the law, you should know that they don't own the Fire Worship Sect's Enforcement Hall. Once the verdict has been recorded in the Enforcement Hall's scrolls, I'll go to the Enforcement Hall immediately to object to this. At that time, the Enforcement Hall will send out another Saint Land Enforcement Elder to investigate this. Your days are numbered, Li Yan said as he looked at Duan Lingtian as though he was looking at a dead person. Duan Lingtian did not even bother to look at Li Yan. As soon as Li Yan finished speaking, Duan Lingtian spat out a word, idiot. Idiot. Duan Lingtian's words shook the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples who were present. This Duan Lingtian is really bold. He dared to call Li Yan an idiot to his face. Duan Lingtian, you're seeking death. Li Yan was already seething with anger. When he heard Duan Lingtian calling him an idiot, he was instantly furious. It seemed as though he was going to seize this chance to make a move against Duan Lingtian. In his opinion, he should teach Duan Lingtian a lesson today even if he could not kill him yet. Just as Li Yan was about to attack, Duan Lingtian suddenly turned to look at him and said nonchalantly, Elder Li Yan, are you misunderstanding something? You didn't think I was calling you an idiot, did you? I wasn't even looking at you. Or did you have such a nickname? Duan Lingtian's nonchalant expression angered Li Yan even more. He wished he could tear him into a million pieces. It was unfortunate, but he knew he could not make a move against Duan Lingtian today. This was because as soon as Duan Lingtian finished speaking, he noticed Guo Shang and Wu Yi's attention were immediately locked on him. It was as though they would both attack him. He made a move against Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian, you won't be able to stay smug for long. Li Yan looked at Duan Lingtian again before he left in a huff without waiting for Duan Lingtian's response. Duan Lingtian narrowed his eyes as he stared at Li Yan's departing figure. There was a cold glint in the depths of his eyes. If he was given a chance, he would not let Li Yan live. After all, Li Yan was like a time bomb to him. What just happened? Duan Lingtian merely received such a light punishment after killing two of our Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples. Isn't this too much? Moreover, what happened inside Elder Wu Yi's territory? What's with the huge turn in the situation? Yes. Earlier, Elder Guo Shang and Elder Wu Yi were obviously displeased with Duan Lingtian. However, after coming out from the Flame territory, it's obvious that they're both on Duan Lingtian's side and are protecting him. They even found him an excuse and gave him such a light punishment. Something must have happened in the flame territory. Unfortunately, we won't ever know what happened inside. The Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples whispered among themselves. They were all filled with questions. All of them saw the Black Turtle Sanctum's Enforcement Elder Guo Shang and the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's Enforcement Elder Wu Yi's change in attitude before and after they entered the flame territory. They were all baffled by the huge change in their attitude. They went from wanting to kill Duan Lingtian to protecting him. All this happened so fast, they found it hard to accept. There was only one thing they were certain of. Something must have happened in the territory. Otherwise, those two enforcement elders' attitudes would not have changed so drastically and quickly. After the verdict had been made, Guo Shang and Wu Yi also took their leave. Many Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples who were curious about the matter directly asked Duan Lingtian, "Duan Lingtian, can you tell us why both enforcement elders changed their attitude so drastically after coming out of the flame territory? If all of you want to know, you may go and ask Elder Wu Yi." Duan Lingtian only smiled and used Wu Yi as a shield. After the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples failed to get an answer out of Duan Lingtian, they finally gave up. "Junior brother Lingtian, what's going on?" After the group of Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples dispersed, Ji Yuli was finally alone with Duan Lingtian. He transmitted his voice to him and asked him about what happened. Ji Yuli was also curious about this matter. "Nothing much happened, I just showed them my worth," Duan Lingtian responded through voice transmission as he smiled coolly. "What do you mean?" Upon hearing Duan Lingtian's words, Ji Yuli became even more curious. "I possess a blue innate spiritual root," Duan Lingtian said with a faint smile. He did not have to hide this matter from Ji Yuli. Blue innate spiritual root. When Ji Yuli heard Duan Lingtian's words, his eyes widened immediately and an expression of disbelief appeared on his face. What's going on? I thought you possess a yellow innate spiritual root." The news regarding Duan Lingtian possessing a yellow innate spiritual roots had long spread in the Four Symbols Sanctums. It was only natural that Ji Yuli had heard about it. However, Duan Lingtian just said that he possessed a blue innate spiritual root. Ji Yuli was completely dumbfounded. "I didn't expect junior brother Lingtian to have a blue spiritual root. Indeed, only such an innate spiritual root is worthy of your martial Dao talents." Ji Yuli finally regained his senses. He assumed the news he heard from the Black Turtle Sanctum was false. Therefore, he no longer questioned Duan Lingtian. "Senior brother Ji Yuli, your innate spiritual root is quite good, right?" Duan Lingtian asked with a smile. "It's much weaker than yours, I only have a green innate spiritual root," Ji Yuli said. "A green innate spiritual root is pretty good." Duan Lingtian nodded. Chapter 1952. In the Fire Worship Sect, even someone with the worst potential with a green innate spiritual root can still become a Bronze Flame Elder. Based on senior brother Ji Yuli's talent, it's not impossible for you to become a Fire Worship Sect's Silver Flame Elder. Duan Lingtian said. "Junior brother Lingtian." Ji Yuli's expression turned solemn when he heard Duan Lingtian's words. "What?" Duan Lingtian's heart skipped a beat when he saw Ji Yuli's sudden solemn expression. "Junior brother Lingtian, I want to leave the Fire Worship Sect for the time being, there's something I need to do," Ji Yuli said after he took a deep breath. "What happened?" Duan Lingtian asked, confused. "It's inconvenient for me to explain it to you now, however, this matter is very important to me. I originally planned to leave after bidding you farewell. However, the Yuan brothers kept a close watch on me so I didn't have a chance to find you in the Black Turtle Sanctum," Ji Yuli said. "Who knew you'd come today and even kill the Yuan brothers to avenge me? I think it's time for me to leave. Senior brother Ji Yuli, no matter what you intend to do, you'll always have my support." Since Ji Yuli said it was inconvenient for him to explain the matter, Duan Lingtian did not persist in questioning him. After all, everyone had their own secrets. Did he not keep secrets from Ji Yuli as well? A smile instantly appeared on Ji Yuli's face after he listened to Duan Lingtian's words. "However, if you intend to leave, senior brother Ji Yuli, it's best you do it as soon as possible, in fact, now would be the best time. Otherwise, the Black Turtle Sanctum's first Silver Flame Elder Lian and Yang Kong, the fifth elder of the Northern Plethora Sect, might tail you," Duan Lingtian said solemnly. "That's what I thought as well." Ji Yuli nodded. He seemed to have thought of something, and he said, "I hope junior brother Lingtian will help me inform Palace Master Zhu of this." "All right," Duan Lingtian promised without any hesitation. Following that, Duan Lingtian sent Ji Yuli all the way till the north of the Vermilion Bird Sanctum before he finally stopped. If they go further north, they would be considered as leaving the Vermilion Bird Sanctum. Senior brother Ji Yuli, please take care, Duan Lingtian said to Ji Yuli. Junior brother Lingtian, you have to be careful while you're in the fire worship sect. When I've dealt with my matter, I'll return and help you. Perhaps, at that time, I would be more of a help and not as useless as I am now. Ji Yuli said with a nod as a self-deprecating smile appeared on his face. What are you saying, senior brother Ji Yuli? No matter what happens, you're still my senior brother. Nothing will ever change that, Duan Lingtian said seriously. Under Duan Lingtian's watchful eyes, Ji Yuli finally left. After Ji Yuli's figure disappeared from his sight, Duan Lingtian finally regained his senses and left the Vermilion Bird Sanctum to return to the Black Turtle Sanctum. What Duan Lingtian wanted to do most now was to cultivate. With this blue innate spiritual root, his cultivation speed was more than one-fold faster than what it used to be. I'd need half a month at most to break through to the Mastery Divine Saint stage. Give me another month, I might even break through to the peak of the Divine Saint stage. After 3 months when I'll have to serve my sentence at the 4 Symbols Sanctums, first mine, my cultivation base might even be at the Exemplary Saint stage. During Duan Lingtian's journey back, he was dreaming about his bright future. With that thought in mind, he was even more eager to return to cultivating. While Duan Lingtian returned to the Black Turtle Sanctum, Ji Yuli had also left the Fire Worship Sect. After leaving the Fire Worship Sect, he picked a direction and moved in a straight line as though there was something guiding him. During the journey, Ji Yuli muttered to himself, 30 years, it has been 30 years. There was a secret in Ji Yuli's heart that even his father, Ji Yu Si-yun, was unaware of. He had obtained an incomplete inheritance in the Dao Martial Saint land 30 years ago. It was only a small fraction of the inheritance. According to the records in the small fraction of inheritance, he must head to the upper province of the Dao Martial Saint land to find the entire inheritance. That was the reason why he had always wanted to go to the upper province. However, he did not leave immediately to look for the inheritance as soon as he arrived in the upper province in order to understand it more. His competitiveness was only sparked when he was tormented by the Yuan brothers. He had desperately wished that he had the complete inheritance at that time. He did not tell his father, Ji Yu Si-yun, about the inheritance due to a warning left behind by the senior who had left the inheritance. He had warned him against sharing the news of the inheritance with his family and friends. Unless it was someone who was suited with the inheritance, he must not pass it on. In order to avoid putting himself in a tough spot, he had kept this a secret. According to the records in the inheritance I obtained in the lower province of the Dao Martial Saint land, the inheritance I'm about to obtain belongs to an ancient sect known as the Seven Absolutes sect. The Seven Absolutes sect has 7 absolutes in total. The inheritance I found is the 3rd absolute, the Kratos progeny. I'll be the current heir of the Kratos progeny. Ji Yuli's eyes brightened. As long as I'm able to obtain the 3rd absolute, the Kratos progeny of the 7 Absolutes sect, my strength would improve greatly. At that time, I might be able to help junior brother Lingtian in rescuing his wife when I return to the Fire Worship sect. The upper province of the Dao Martial Saint land was very vast. It was far bigger than the lower province of the Dao Martial Saint land. In the upper province of the Dao Martial Saint land, in the North Polar region. It snowed there all year long. The sky and the ground seemed hard to differentiate since they were all white. At this moment, an old figure stood on a snow-capped mountain in the North Polar region. Although his clothes were thin, he did not seem cold at all. As the old man's clothes fluttered in the wind, coupled with the falling snow, he seemed like a celestial being. If there was another person there, they would discover that the old man's feet did not touch the ground. In fact, the snow did not even fall on him. It was as though there was an invisible shield around him. Hoo. The cold wind blew continuously at the old man, but he continued to stand there motionlessly. His eyes were looking in the distance in the southwest direction. His fingers were moving as though he was calculating something as he muttered under his breath, the heir to the Fog Rain progeny has grown stronger. Moreover, the heir to the Kratos progeny seems to have appeared. It seems like the day when the people of the Seven Absolutes sect gather isn't too far away. The gathering of the 7 Absolutes. Old prophet, that's a fanciful dream you have. Without knowing when, a beautiful woman had appeared on the snow-capped mountain as well. Although she was walking on the snow, there were no traces of her footsteps at all. The beautiful woman had an exquisite face. Her near-perfect features were unforgettable once one had seen it. She could not help but laugh when she heard the old man's words. As far as I know, the sixth absolute, the Didymus progeny, still remains unfound, right? The beautiful woman said. The Didymus progeny is in my hands, I've chosen the heir for it. Looking at the time, Wu Ying should be bringing that person here now, the old man said. You Wu Ying, that wretched ladyboy. Upon hearing the old man's words, a hint of disgust flashed in the beautiful woman's eyes. As soon as the beautiful woman finished speaking, a feminine voice said, Widow Wa, who are you calling a wretched ladyboy? There was a hint of anger in that voice. The voice seemed to come from nowhere. It did not seem like there was anyone else on the snow-capped mountain. I'm referring to that person with an androgynous voice. What? You're upset? Don't forget that your cultivation base is far beneath mine, you can fight me if you're unhappy. Upon hearing the feminine voice, the beautiful woman seemed to turn into a vixen. Humph, the feminine voice only snorted. It seemed to have disappeared completely. You're his elder, why can't you just leave him alone? The old man sighed. If Duan Lingtian's father, Duan Rufeng, was here, he would definitely be able to recognize the old man. It was none other than the old prophet. In fact, he was also no stranger to the feminine voice from earlier. It belonged to Yu Wu Ying, who had spent some time by his side. The seven absolutes sect had seven absolutes. The fourth absolute was the dark shadow. The heir to that progeny was good at assassination. They could be considered as the kings of assassination. Yu Wu Ying was currently the heir to the dark shadow. Since the wretched ladyboy is here, I assume the heir to the Didymus progeny whom you've chosen is here as well, let's go and meet them together. The beautiful woman said. Based on her words, it was obvious she was interested in who the old prophet had chosen to inherit the Didymus progeny of the seven absolute sect. At the same time, in the main hall of a palace that stood on a broad platform in the snow-capped mountain, two women's voices sounded in surprise at the same time. Miss Shui Nai, you, why are you here? The young lady was also stunned when she saw the pair of twins before her eyes. The young lady who walked into the main hall was none other than Han Shui Nai, who was brought to the upper province of the Dao Martial Saint Land by her master. She was also the eldest young miss of the Greenwave Mansion in the lower province of the Dao Martial Saint Land. Both of you are the ones whom the wretched ladyboy, Yu Wu Ying, brought. Han Shui Nai asked in surprise after a few moments when she seemed to have recalled something. Shui Nai, I'll say this again, I'm not a wretched ladyboy. My name is Yu Wu Ying, you can address me as Senior Brother Yu Wu Ying or Lord Yu Wu Ying. The feminine voice sounded in the main hall again. It sounded terrifying. Chapter 1953, Miss Shui Nai, you, why are you here? One of the twin brothers looked at Han Shui Nai in surprise. It was obvious he did not expect to meet Han Shui Nai here. Based on what he knew, Han Shui Nai was the eldest young miss of a fifth-rate force, the Greenwave Mansion, from the lower province of the Dao Martial Saint Land. Why would she be here? Nangong Yi, I was here much earlier than both of you. Han Shui Nai blinked her beautiful eyes, and she sounded surprised when she said, however, I didn't expect the heirs of the Didymus progeny that the wretched ladyboy said Grandpa Prophet has chosen are two of you, this is really surprising. How did this happen? The twin brothers standing in front of Han Shui Nai was none other than Nangong Chen and Nangong Yi. Ever since the brothers were brought to the Azure Cloud Mansion by Duan Lingtian, they have stayed there. Until a while ago, they were brought away from the Azure Cloud Mansion by Yu Wu Ying and came to the upper province of the Dao Martial Saint Land. During the journey, Yu Wu Ying had also informed them of some things. They knew they were about to become heirs to the Didymus progeny from an ancient sect in the Dao Martial Saint Land, the Seven Absolute Sect. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for them. For this reason, they were excited for a long time. However, they did not expect to meet Han Shui Nai here. They were no strangers to Han Shui Nai. Back when they were still on Cloud Continent, they had met Han Shui Nai through Duan Lingtian. Shui Nai, if you keep calling me that, don't blame me if I start despising you. The feminine voice rang again in the air, expressing his dissatisfaction, even though no one could be seen. I wasn't the one who gave you the nickname Wretched Ladyboy. If you're going to despise someone, then you should despise my master. As long as you can get her to stop calling you a wretched ladyboy, I'll definitely stop calling you that, Han Shui Nai said mischievously to the air. The feminine voice no longer spoke after that. Yu Wu Ying stayed in a corner, feeling depressed. Han Shui Nai's master, Widow Wa, was not only a generation older than him, but her strength was far superior to his as well. Miss Shui Nai, are you also one of the disciples of the Seven Absolute sect? Nangong Chen, who was standing at the side, asked in amazement. However, Han Shui Nai was even more surprised than him. She looked at Nangong Chen as if she was looking at a monster. She was shocked. Nangong Chen, he can actually initiate a conversation. From what Han Shui Nai could remember, although the Nangong brothers were identical physically, their personalities were completely different. One was an extrovert while the other was an introvert. They were polar opposites. For that reason, she could not help but feel shocked when she heard Nangong Chen taking the initiative to start a conversation. That's right, I'm also a disciple of the Seven Absolute sect. I'm the heir to the Seven Absolute sect's Red Dust progeny. Han Shui Nai nodded in response to Nangong Chen's question. Although the Red Dust progeny might be ranked 7th in the Seven Absolute sect, it was one of the most important progenies in the Seven Absolute sect because they were in charge of gathering information. It was not outrageous to describe the Red Dust progeny as the eyes and ears of the Seven Absolute sect. Moreover, apart from the Fog Rain progeny that had a special place in the Seven Absolute sect, the ranking of the other Absolutes was not determined by strength. Put the others aside, and focus on the second Absolute, the Prophet. In terms of fighting ability, if all of them from the Seven Absolute sect had the same cultivation base, none of them could win the third Absolute, the Kratos progeny. However, the third Absolute, Kratos, would not necessarily be able to avoid the assassination attempt from the fourth Absolute, the Dark Shadow, if they had the same cultivation base. The fourth Absolute, the Dark Shadow, would not necessarily be able to defeat the sixth Absolute, the Didymus, if they worked together. After all, he could only kill one person in a short span of time, and the sixth Absolute, the Didymus, had two people. If both of them fought him, he, naturally, would find it hard to hide. Apart from the Fog Rain progeny, all Absolutes of the Seven Absolute sect had its own characteristics and strength. Outside the palace. From a distance, in the sky filled with falling snowflakes, the old prophet and a beautiful woman walked side by side. Their pace made it seem like they were taking a casual walk. As they were walking, the beautiful woman looked at the old prophet and asked solemnly, "Old prophet, are you really planning to open up the sixth Absolute heaven-defying fate-changing grand formation?" Yes, the old prophet nodded and said, "Since the heir to first Absolute, the Fog Rain progeny has emerged and grown stronger, it's time to activate the sixth Absolute heaven-defying fate-changing grand formation left behind by the Sword Saint ancestor. Otherwise, the six other Absolutes wouldn't be able to keep up with the pace of the heir of the first Absolute. You go and look for the heir of the Kratos progeny and bring him here. I shall return to the Phoenix clan to pick up that girl that inherited the blazing Phoenix progeny. At that time, I'll be able to open up the six Absolute heaven-defying fate-changing grand formation and give all six Absolutes heirs a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. At that time, you and I can take the back seat," the old prophet said. "I've found an heir for the Red Dust progeny, however, your prophet progeny doesn't seem to have an heir yet." The beautiful woman questioned, "If the prophet progeny doesn't have an heir and you activate the six Absolute heaven-defying fate-changing grand formation, won't it cause harm to the future heir of the prophet progeny? You and I are too old to fully reap the benefits of the six Absolute heaven-defying fate-changing grand formation. Moreover, as far as I know, the six Absolute heaven-defying fate-changing grand formation left behind by the Sword Saint ancestor is designed for the heirs of the six other progenies apart from the heir of the first progeny. If there's one less, the effect will be greatly reduced. Rest assured, I've found an heir to the prophet progeny a long time ago. When I go to the Phoenix clan to bring the girl from the blazing Phoenix progeny back, I'll also bring my heir back," the old prophet said. What? Upon hearing the old prophet's words, the beautiful woman was instantly shocked. You've already found the heir to the prophet progeny. Speaking of, I found my heir earlier than you did, she just didn't cultivate by my side, the old prophet said with a faint smile. Old man, you're really good at keeping secrets. I really didn't suspect anything at all. I've wasted my time worrying about you and if you'll be able to find anyone appropriate. The beautiful woman snapped. Let's go and see the two little fellows that'll inherit the Didymus progeny. Meanwhile, the old prophet and the beautiful woman finally arrived at the palace on the snow-capped mountain. The old prophet entered the palace as soon as he finished speaking as the beautiful woman followed behind him. The snow kept falling on the snow-capped mountain. It hid the palace that was located on the mountain. If one did not pay close attention, one would not be able to discover its existence. The snow-capped mountain blended well with the snowy landscape, making it inconspicuous. For this reason, the three great sects were unaware of its location. Otherwise, they would have sent out numerous powerhouses if they knew the remains of the Seven Absolutes sect were hidden there. The sole purpose would be to eliminate all those from the Seven Absolutes sect. Naturally, Duan Lingtian was unaware of the existence of the palace on the snow-capped mountain as well. Moreover, he was also unaware that almost all the current heirs of the Seven Absolutes sect were there. In fact, Duan Lingtian still did not know about the existence of the Seven Absolutes sect, not to mention the fact that his identity is the heir of the Fog Rain progeny and the leader of the Seven Absolutes sect. Ever since he returned to the Black Turtle Sanctum and the residence of the Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples, Duan Lingtian was focused on his cultivation on the 4th level of the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. 9 Dragons War Sovereign Technique. As Duan Lingtian circulated the cultivation method, the Sun Saint energy flowed through the 99 Saint veins in his body and completed a great chi cycle repeatedly. Time continued to pass. After some time, 5 months had passed. At this time, a vast aura suddenly surged out of Duan Lingtian, who was sitting in midair inside the 4th level of the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. There were hints of Sun Saint energy in the aura. There seemed to be some changes to the Sun Saint energy as well. After a while, the Sun Saint energy returned into Duan Lingtian's body. It was as though it did not appear at all. I've finally made a breakthrough. Duan Lingtian opened his eyes. His eyes were as bright as the stars in the night sky. Duan Lingtian's cultivation base had finally broken through to the Mastery Divine Saint stage. It took about 5 months in the 4th level of the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda for me to break through. It's a little more than half a month in the outside world. The blue innate spiritual root is really amazing, Duan Lingtian muttered to himself with bright eyes. It merely took him half a month to break through from the Intermediate Divine Saint stage to the Mastery Divine Saint stage. Even geniuses with blue innate spiritual roots did not possess his cultivation speed. I must continue and try to break through to the peak of the Divine Saint stage in one try. With that thought in mind, Duan Lingtian shut his eyes and continued cultivating. He cultivated using the 9 Dragons War Sovereign technique. In his body, there were 9 dragons repeatedly moving the Sun Saint energy and the Heaven and Earth spiritual energy in one great chi circulatory cycle. When Duan Lingtian opened his eyes again, a year and 3 months had passed in the 4th level of the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. In the outside world, only 1.5 months had passed. When he felt the vast and majestic Sun Saint energy in his body, Duan Lingtian muttered under his breath, I've probably broken through too quickly previously, that's why my foundation wasn't stable. In turn, it took me longer to break through to the peak of the Divine Saint stage. It was fortunate there was no one around to hear his words. Otherwise, they would definitely beat him up. It only took him 1.5 months to break through from the Mastery Divine Saint stage to the peak of the Divine Saint stage. If that was considered slow, should the others just die? Chapter 1954. I thought after my innate spiritual root changes my cultivation speed will increase much more than this. It seems that there are still limitations to the changes. Duan Lingtian understood the limitations after having 2 consecutive breakthroughs in his cultivation. Before he broke through to the peak of the Divine Saint stage, his cultivation had just entered the Mastery Divine Saint stage and had a very unstable foundation. It was due to the instability of his foundation that caused obstacles in his recent cultivation. If it was not for the obstacles, I would have been able to save an additional 33% of my time. Duan Lingtian thought to himself. If it was not for his unstable foundation, Duan Lingtian was confident he would be able to break through to the peak of the Divine Saint stage from the Mastery Divine Saint stage in just a month. It was the reason why his breakthrough took an additional fortnight. This obviously referred to the time outside. A year and 3 months had passed in the 4th level of the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda, but only a month and a half had passed outside. The difference between the time in the 4th level of the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda and the real world is approximately 1 to 10. I'll be able to break through to the Exemplary Saint stage if I continue cultivating and spend time in here, but I should stop cultivating for the time being and focus on comprehending my divine abilities and learning the moves of the Sovereign Heart Sword. Duan Lingtian stopped cultivating temporarily after giving it some thought. In fact, there was no need for him to put effort into stabilizing his foundation. As long as he gave it some time, his foundation would eventually stabilize on its own. There's 1 more month left before I need to go to the first mine of the 4 Symbols Sanctums to serve my sentence. A month outside is 10 months in the 4th level of the Seven Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. I'll try to master the Black Turtle Sanctum's most treasured divine ability, the Black Turtle's Barrier. I refuse to believe that my heart that has been tempered by the sovereign heart sword can't master it. Soon after, Duan Lingtian made up his mind to attempt to master the Black Turtle Sanctum's high-grade divine ability, the Black Turtle's Barrier, for the time being. At the same time, it would also allow his foundation to stabilize. Almost 2 months have passed outside, but there's no movement from Lian. It seems like the Saint Lands Enforcement Hall has rejected him. Duan Lingtian thought of the Black Turtle Sanctum's first Silver Flame Elder Lian before he attempted to master the Black Turtle Barrier. He remembered when he killed the Yuan brothers at the Vermilion Bird Sanctum 2 months ago, he was supposed to be sentenced to death. However, the Black Turtle Sanctum's Enforcement Elder Guo Shang and the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's Enforcement Elder Wu Yi changed their mind when he showed them his innate spiritual root. A martial Dao genius with a blue innate spiritual root could be considered as a future star in the fire worship sect. It was forgivable for such a person to kill 1 or 2 normal disciples. After all, compared to the death of 1 or 2 normal disciples, sentencing a martial Dao genius to death would incur more losses to the fire worship sect. It was only natural the fire worship sect would choose to protect the genius since the deaths of normal disciples would not affect the sect much. This is proof that the Dao martial Saint Land was a world where the fittest survived and the strong reigned. Highly talented disciples with bright futures were exempted from following the rules and were given special treatment even in big sects with strict rules such as the fire worship sect. Duan Lingtian managed to survive because he had shown the enforcement elders his worth. He had shown them his blue innate spiritual root. Lian should have already found out about me possessing a blue innate spiritual root. Duan Lingtian thought to himself. Lian was not satisfied with Guo Shang's verdict almost 2 months ago, and he had threatened that he would go to the Saint Lands Enforcement Hall to object to it. However, 2 months had passed since then, and Lian had not made any move. This was proof enough that Lian failed to change Guo Xing's verdict. The report regarding my verdict that Elder Guo Shang has submitted to the Saint Lands Enforcement Hall definitely states that I possess a blue innate spiritual root. Otherwise, the Saint Lands Enforcement Hall would not let such a verdict stand. After all, I can claim self-defense for killing Yuan Hong. However, there's no excuse for me to kill Yuan Kuang. Duan Lingtian dared to kill the Yuan brothers because he knew he would possess the blue innate spiritual root soon. At that time, before he killed Yuan Hong, he possessed a dark green innate spiritual root. He was only a step away from possessing a blue innate spiritual root. As it turned out, Duan Lingtian was right. After killing the Yuan brothers and devouring their innate spiritual roots, his innate spiritual roots managed to change from dark green to blue. The Black Turtle Sanctum's enforcement elder Guo Shang and Wu Yi would not have such a drastic change in attitude if he did not show his blue innate spiritual root. Their change was so drastic that they went from wanting to kill him to protecting him at all costs. To protect Duan Lingtian, Guo Shang and Wu Yi cooked up a grand speech that would give them the justification to protect him. Naturally, the justification was just a joke in the eyes of the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples who were present at the time, since everyone could tell the enforcement elders were just making excuses. Even then, what could they do? As long as Saint Land's Enforcement Hall decided to put the case to rest, the outcome of the incident had been decided. It seems that the outcome is already decided. As for my punishment, it won't affect my plan much to serve in the first mine of the 4 Symbols Sanctums. Based on the rules of the 4 Symbols Sanctum, disciples who are sentenced to serve in the mines can still become Saint Land disciples as long as they obtain recognition from people in the Saint Land. Duan Lingtian had heard about the 4 Symbols Sanctums, disciples being sentenced to the mines for wrongdoings in the past. Moreover, he knew that as long as the disciple was able to enter the Saint Land, then he would be free from the punishment. It's not too hard for me to obtain recognition to enter the fire worship sect's Saint Land. I can just participate in the Saint Land assessment and become a disciple of the Saint Land with my own strength. However, it would be some time before the next Saint Land assessment is going to be held. Duan Lingtian believed he would not have to serve in the first mine of the 4 Symbols Sanctums for a long time. He would be able to leave the mine as soon as the Saint Land assessment began. As long as he was able to pass the assessment and become a disciple, he would be free from his punishment of serving in the mines for 10 years. I'll try to master the Black Turtle Sanctum's divine ability, the Black Turtle's Barrier, during the next 10 months. I refuse to believe I can't master the best defensive high-grade divine ability in the fire worship sect. Duan Lingtian cleared his mind of all unnecessary thoughts and focused on mastering the Black Turtle's Barrier. All the information regarding Black Turtle's Barrier had been stored in his mind during his last visit to the Black Turtle Sanctum. While Duan Lingtian was busy mastering the Black Turtle's barrier, Lian was extremely unhappy with his recent discovery. Does Duan Lingtian really have a blue innate spiritual root? But, I remember during the innate talent assessment, he only has a yellow innate spiritual root. Is it possible that not only did he conceal his cultivation base, but he also concealed his innate spiritual root? Lian said as his expression changed. Lian had gone to the enforcement hall in the Saint Land a month ago, intending to overturn Guoshang's verdict. Duan Lingtian had intentionally killed Yuan Kuang. Any of the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples could attest to that. Therefore, Lian was very confident he could overturn Guoshang's verdict. In his opinion, as long as he raised objections to Guoshang's verdict, the enforcement hall would send another enforcement elder to investigate the matter. At that time, Duan Lingtian would definitely die. However, things did not go as he had expected them to. When Lian arrived at the enforcement hall in the Saint Land and read the report Guoshang had submitted, he was dumbfounded. Guoshang had reported that there was a possibility that Duan Lingtian had killed the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciple, Yuan Kuang, on purpose. Since Duan Lingtian was a martial Dao genius who possessed a blue innate spiritual root, according to the unspoken rules that overruled the official rules and laws of the fire worship sect, Duan Lingtian should not be killed for the death of an ordinary disciple like Yuan Kuang. That was the reason why he had only sentenced Duan Lingtian to serve in the first mine of the Four Symbols Sanctums. The enforcement hall of Saint Land had agreed with his decision regarding this genius with a blue innate spiritual root. Such a genius deserved to be given a chance. A blue innate spiritual root. How's it possible? Lian felt as though 1,000 horses in a frenzy were trampling on his heart after he read the report. He immediately accused Guoshang of falsifying information in the report since he was certain that Duan Lingtian possessed a yellow innate spiritual root and not a blue innate spiritual root. However, the response from the elder on duty in the Saint Land's enforcement hall made him hesitate. Before you have sufficient evidence proving that the Black Turtle Sanctum's enforcement elder Guoshang falsified information in the report, the enforcement hall will not respond to your accusation based on hearsay. Naturally, if you insist on accusing him, you may do so. We'll send an enforcement elder from the enforcement hall to go along with you to verify the truth of your accusations. If your accusations are found to be false, we'll take it as you dishonoring the enforcement hall, and you will be severely punished. The enforcement elder on duty said. This made Lian hesitate because dishonoring the enforcement hall was not a minor crime. Although it was not serious enough to be banished from fire worship sect, the punishment would be extremely tortuous. Chapter 1955. Even Lian, the Black Turtle Sanctum's first Silver Flame Elder, did not dare to look down on the severe punishment by the enforcement hall. For this reason, at that time, he left the Saint Land enforcement hall to personally search for evidence to prove that Duan Lingtian possessed a yellow innate spiritual root. He began by investigating the relationship between Duan Lingtian and Guoshang. As the enforcement elder, Guoshang's righteousness was famous in the Black Turtle Sanctum. Otherwise, he would not have been appointed as the Black Turtle Sanctum's enforcement elder by the Saint Land enforcement hall. If Lian did not personally witness Duan Lingtian tested yellow for his innate spiritual root, he would not have doubted the Guoshang's verdict. Since he had witnessed it for himself, he felt the report Guoshang had handed into the Saint Land enforcement hall was fabricated. He firmly believed that Duan Lingtian was only a commoner who possessed a yellow innate spiritual root. There was only one reason for such a fair and just person like Guoshang to lie for Duan Lingtian. Their relationship must not be simple. For this reason, for almost 2 months, Lian investigated the relationship between Guoshang and Duan Lingtian's relationship from every aspect. Even then, he still came up empty-handed. Is there a technique to conceal one's innate spiritual root? By right, it's impossible for such a technique to exist. Even if it exists, only powerhouses at the Saint Celestial stage or above will be able to cast it. After all, only a powerhouse at the Saint Celestial stage or above can detect the presence of their innate spiritual root. Those below the Saint Celestial stage can't even detect their innate spiritual roots, so how can they possibly master a technique to conceal their innate spiritual root? Lian muttered to himself. He was certain that Guoshang had lied to help Duan Lingtian escape the death sentence, even though he had no idea why Guoshang would do so. Master! A voice suddenly rang from outside, causing Lian to regain his senses. Enter, Lian answered before a ghost-like figure entered the vast mansion Lian was residing. The person was a middle-aged man with a medium build. He had a slightly fierce appearance. His unkempt hair fell around his shoulders, and his eyes shone with a terrifying light. As he stood there, he looked like a vicious wolf. Anyone who saw him would feel chills running up their spines. This middle-aged man was wearing a long white robe that was embroidered with a bronze flame. However, there was no pattern to the flame. Based on this, one could tell he was Bronze Flame Elder from the Saint Land. The exclusive uniforms of Saint Land elders and disciples were embroidered with only flames. Only the uniforms of the four symbol sanctums, elders and disciples had patterns on them. "Good day, Master." After the middle-aged man entered, he bowed at Lian respectfully. Upon seeing the middle-aged man, Lian sighed. "Wei, I'm sorry for letting you down. Not only did I cause you to lose a direct disciple, but I'm unable to kill that murderer as well." Based on their words, one could easily tell this middle-aged man, Wei, was the master of the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciple, Yuan Hong, whom Duan Lingtian killed 2 months ago. "Master, Yuan Hong did not die in vain since it's for your sake." Wei shook his head instead. However, his eyes gleamed coldly. "However, I can't believe his killer has such a trick up his sleeve. He wasn't even given a death sentence. He only possesses a yellow innate spiritual root. Why is he receiving special treatment?" Wei sounded emotional when he reached the end of his sentence. After all, Yuan Hong was his only direct disciple. Although Yuan Hong's innate talent was only ordinary, he had adored Yuan Hong a lot due to how sensible he was. Wei had just come out of his closed-door cultivation yesterday. Since he was feeling bored today, he decided to visit the Vermilion Bird Sanctum to look for his friend. Who knew he would find out that his direct disciple, Yuan Hong, had been killed. Not only that, but his killer remained unpunished. After he had learned about what happened and the killer was a Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple called Duan Lingtian, he immediately came to the Black Turtle Sanctum. He quickly went to look for his master as soon as he arrived in the Black Turtle Sanctum. From what he knew, when the Black Turtle Sanctum's enforcement elder Guo Shang announced the verdict, his master was present as well. Not only that, but his master had announced he would go to the Saint Land Enforcement Hall to object to Guo Shang's verdict. However, based on the current situation, it seemed like his master had failed even after going to the Saint Land Enforcement Hall. "Master, I heard you've already gone to the Saint Land Enforcement Hall?" Wei asked as he looked at Lian. "Yes," Lian nodded. It was still fine when Wei did not mention the Saint Land Enforcement Hall, but as soon as he mentioned it, Lian's expression turned grim immediately. "You couldn't get them to overturn Guo Shang's verdict?" Wei asked again. "No, I couldn't." Lian shook his head again. "Why?" Quote. Wei was puzzled. "As far as I know, not only did Duan Lingtian kill my disciple, but he also killed my disciple's younger brother. He can claim self-defense for killing my disciple since he made the first move, but it's obvious he had intentionally killed my disciple's younger brother, Yuan Kuang. Moreover, there are many Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples who can attest to that. Don't tell me the Saint Land Enforcement Hall really agrees with Guo Shang's verdict." A hint of dissatisfaction could be heard when he spoke. In the report that was submitted by Guo Shang, it stated that Duan Lingtian is a martial genius who possesses a blue innate spiritual root. It was because of this the Saint Land Enforcement Hall did not bother to investigate the matter of Duan Lingtian intentionally killing a fellow disciple, Lian answered in his deep voice. Lian was extremely frustrated and baffled by this matter as well. Blue spiritual root. Wei was momentarily stunned before he said, "Master, as far as I know, Duan Lingtian possesses a yellow innate spiritual root, right? Weren't you one of the moderators when he took part in the Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples' assessment?" "That's right." Lian nodded. "At that time, we used 2 spiritual pearls to determine his innate spiritual root level. Both confirmed that he had a yellow innate spiritual root. I'm 100% certain of this." "Then, does this mean the report Guo Shang handed in has been falsified? Did he lie about Duan Lingtian possessing a blue innate spiritual root?" Wei's eyes gleamed coldly. "I thought so too in the beginning. I even wanted to file a complaint against that old geezer Guo Shang. However, the person in charge in the Saint Land Enforcement Hall told me that if I insist on filing a complaint against Guo Shang, the Enforcement Hall will accept and investigate the matter. However, if it's proven that my accusations against Guo Shang are false, I'd be punished by the Enforcement Hall instead." A hint of fear could be seen in Lian's eyes when he spoke. Guo Shang is a member of the Enforcement Hall after all. Slandering an enforcement elder is not a minor crime. Then does this mean you're not certain if Duan Ling Tian really has a blue innate spiritual root, Master? Wei he asked with a frown. Master, didn't you witness with your own eyes and confirmed it during the innate talent assessment that he only possesses a yellow innate spiritual root? This is because Duan Ling Tian knows some technique to conceal his cultivation base. When I thought of this, I can't be certain he doesn't know another technique to conceal his innate spiritual root. However, based on the situation, I don't think it's possible. Li Yan continued to say, after all, only a powerhouse at the Saint Celestial stage or above can sense his own innate spiritual root. Duan Ling Tian is only an exemplary Saint stage martial cultivator, it's completely impossible for him to sense his innate spiritual root. If he can't sense his innate spiritual root, how can he possibly conceal his innate spiritual root? Indeed, Wei He's eyes brightened when he heard Li Yan's words. It was obvious he agreed with Li Yan. If that's the case, it's obvious that the Black Turtle Sanctum's enforcement elder Guo Shang is playing favoritism and has falsified his report. That's what I suspect as well. However, in these past 2 months, I've repeatedly investigated the relationship between Guo Shang and Duan Ling Tian, but I couldn't find anything fishy at all. As the Black Turtle Sanctum's enforcement elder, Guo Shang has always been just and fair. There's no reason for him to favor a new disciple who has just entered the Black Turtle Sanctum and lie for his sake. Li Yan said as he shook his head. This was what puzzled him the most. This was why he felt slightly hesitant to lodge a complaint against Guo Shang. Master, there must be some relationship between Guo Shang and that Duan Ling Tian. They must have hidden it really well, that's why you couldn't find anything. It's just as you said, with Duan Ling Tian's cultivation base, it's impossible for him to conceal his innate spiritual root. Unlike Li Yan who felt hesitant, Wei he was very confident. Not only that, but you personally witnessed he possesses a yellow innate spiritual root during the innate talent assessment twice. Moreover, he was tested twice with 2 different spiritual pearls. From this alone, we can confirm that Duan Ling Tian only has a yellow innate spiritual root. Guo Shang must have falsified his report. Wei he continued saying, Master, after taking everything into consideration, I've decided I'm going to head to the Saint Land Enforcement Hall and file a complaint against the Black Turtle Sanctum's enforcement elder Guo Shang for favoritism and falsifying his report about Duan Ling Tian possessing a blue innate spiritual root. Once Guo Shang is found guilty, Duan Ling Tian will, naturally, also lose his privilege and be sentenced to death. Guo Shang will be punished as well, and he might even lose his position as an enforcement elder. Wei He's tone brooked no argument. As soon as Wei He finished speaking, he bade farewell to Li Yan who was in a daze. When Li Yan finally regained his senses, Wei He had already left. I've really turned into a coward as I age, even my disciple is more courageous than I am, Li Yan mocked himself with a smile. Chapter 1956. Chapter 1957. Visitors from the Saint Land Enforcement Hall. There's still not much progress. It seems like I'll have to observe someone casting the Black Turtle's barrier before I can successfully comprehend and master it in a short time. Inside the 4th level of the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda, 3 days had passed in just a blink of an eye. Duan Ling Tian could not help but sigh when he opened his eyes. However, in the fire worship sect, there are not more than 10 people who have successfully comprehended and mastered the Black Turtle's barrier. In our Black Turtle Sanctum, it seems like only the Sanctum leader has mastered the Black Turtle's barrier. Duan Ling Tian thought to himself. The Sanctum leader of the Black Turtle Sanctum was also a Golden Flame Elder in the Fire Worship sect. It was said that he was a powerhouse who was ranked in the top 50 of the Supreme Saint ranking. When Duan Ling Tian was thinking about how he could get the Sanctum leader of the Black Turtle Sanctum to cast the Black Turtle's barrier so he could watch, a boisterous voice rang in the air suddenly. Duan Ling Tian. The sound was so loud that it could be heard clearly in the Secundus house and the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. Who's calling for me? Duan Ling Tian was puzzled when he heard the voice. He was certain he had not heard of the voice before. The voice sounded old. He was certain the person calling out to him was an old man. I'm Meng Jin, a Black Turtle Sanctum Silver Flame Elder. After that person called out to Duan Ling Tian, he began to introduce himself as though he feared Duan Ling Tian would ignore him. Meng Jin. Duan Ling Tian thought about it for a moment before he realized he had heard of this name before. Meng Jin was one of the 5 Silver Flame Elders in the Black Turtle Sanctum. With Li Yan, Guo Shang, and Tang Shan around, Meng Jin did not seem to have any presence. That was why it took Duan Ling Tian a moment to remember him. After Duan Ling Tian left the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda and put it away, he opened the door of the Secundus house. The instant he left the Secundus house, he instantly sensed two pairs of eyes trained on him. One of them was filled with hostility. Duan Lingtian turned to look at them. He saw two figures standing nearby. One was standing in the lead, the other was standing at the back. The person standing in the lead was an old man wearing the uniform exclusive to a Black Turtle Sanctum's Silver Flame Elder. His body was robust. If one did not look at his face, one would not be able to tell he was old. The person standing behind the old man was no stranger to Duan Lingtian. It was none other than the Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple who had fought with and was defeated by Duan Lingtian, resulting in his Secundus house being taken over by Duan Lingtian. All this happened 2 months ago. He seemed to be called Zhongji. It was apparent Meng Jin was the one who called out to him earlier. "Elder Meng Jin, are you looking for me?" Duan Lingtian asked curiously as he looked at the old man. "You, follow me," Meng Qing ordered Duan Lingtian as he looked at him indifferently. As soon as he finished speaking, he flew out of the Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples. It was as though he was certain Duan Lingtian would do as he was told. "Farewell, master." Before Duan Lingtian made his move, he heard Zhongji cried out respectfully before bowing to Meng Jing. "Elder Meng Jin, is Zhongji's master?" Duan Lingtian was slightly surprised when he discovered this. Earlier, when he saw Zhongji standing behind Meng Jin, he thought Zhongji was randomly asked by Meng Jin to show him his residence. He did not expect Meng Jin to be Zhongji's master. Although he knew that Meng Jin was Zhongji's master, he still followed after him. Since there were so many people watching, he was not afraid Meng Jin would make a move against him. Duan Lingtian has gone with Elder Meng Jin. Elder Meng Jin seems to be looking for Duan Lingtian. Does he intend to seek revenge for his disciple, Zhongji, for what happened 2 months ago? Do you think it's possible? That incident took place 2 months ago. If Elder Meng Jin wanted to seek revenge for Zhongji, he would have done so earlier. Why would he wait until now? You have a point. The Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples who happened to see Duan Lingtian leaving together with Meng Jin could not help but discuss among themselves. No matter what, senior brother Duan Lingtian won't be placed in a disadvantageous position. 2 months ago, he killed 2 people from the Vermilion Bird Sanctum and created such a huge commotion, and yet, he's merely being sent to our 4 Symbols Sanctum's first mine to serve for 10 years. His crime is killing fellow disciples, not some minor crime. Isn't it because the 2 Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples looked for trouble with Duan Lingtian and wanted to kill him? Duan Lingtian had only acted out of self-defense, that's why he received such a light punishment. The truth is not like that. I have a friend who's a Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciple, and he witnessed the incident that day. According to him, it's indeed true that one of the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciples made the first move and attacked Duan Lingtian. However, it's uncertain if he intended to kill Duan Lingtian. It's very likely he just wanted to teach Duan Lingtian a lesson for offending our Black Turtle Sanctum's Elder Lian. A Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciple tried to seek revenge for Elder Lian. Are you sure you heard correctly? Well, you probably don't know this. Rumor has it that the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciple was the direct disciple of Lian's great direct disciple. He's Elder Lian's grand disciple. How's it strange for him to seek revenge for his grand master? Put aside whether Elder Lian's grand disciple really intended to kill Duan Lingtian or not, it's said that the other Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciple didn't even make a move against Duan Lingtian, but he was killed as well. From what the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's disciple said, Duan Lingtian had intentionally killed him. Although that was the case, in the end, our Black Turtle Sanctum's enforcement elder Guo Shang only sent him to serve in the mine for 10 years. Don't tell me the Vermilion Bird Sanctum's enforcement elder has no objection against Elder Guo Shang's verdict. It's said that the verdict was jointly made by Elder Guo Shang and that Vermilion Bird Sanctum's enforcement elder. After discussing about Duan Lingtian, the Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples soon shifted their topic to the incident that happened in the Vermilion Bird Sanctum 2 months ago. That incident had now spread in the entire 4 Symbols Sanctums. At the same time, many 4 Symbols Sanctum's disciples doubted the Black Turtle Sanctum's enforcement elder's verdict, but there was nothing they could do about it. As the saying went, the words of the lowly carry little weight. As time went by, fewer and fewer people talked about it. However, deep inside many of the 4 Symbols Sanctum's disciples' hearts, they suspected Duan Lingtian had a strong backing. Otherwise, how could he get away with killing someone intentionally with just a light punishment? Meanwhile, when Duan Lingtian caught up to Meng Jin, one of the 5 great silver flame elders in the Black Turtle Sanctum, he could not help but ask, "Elder Meng Jin, where are you taking me?" "You'll find out soon enough," Meng Jin answered nonchalantly. However, upon hearing Meng Jin's words, Duan Lingtian came to a halt and frowned as he said, "Elder Meng Jin, if you don't make it clear to me, please don't blame me for not cooperating with you. Who knows if you're trying to seek revenge from me for injuring your disciples 2 months ago?" "Seek revenge from you?" Upon hearing Duan Lingtian's words, Meng Jin was momentarily stunned before he began to chuckle. "An old man like me would not stoop so low as to interfere in the matters between 2 juniors. Moreover, you injuring him can be considered as a sort of training for him. I'm happy about that. Why should I seek revenge from you?" Meng Jin's words were magnanimous, and he sounded sincere, leaving no room for Duan Lingtian to doubt him. "Fine, since it's just the both of us here, there's no harm in telling you about it now," Meng Jin said. "The reason I came to look for you is due to Silver Flame Elder Qian from the Saint Land Enforcement Hall." "Saint Land Enforcement Hall? Silver Flame Elder Qian?" Duan Lingtian narrowed his eyes and asked, "Elder Meng Jin, do you know why Elder Qian is looking for me?" At this moment, Duan Lingtian's heart began to palpitate. Could it be that Lian managed to overturn Elder Guoshang's verdict from 2 months ago? However, he quickly dismissed this thought since he found it ludicrous. With his innate spiritual root, there was no way the Saint Land Enforcement Hall would not stand on his side. However, if Elder Lian did not manage to overturn Elder Guoshang's verdict, why would a Silver Flame Elder from the Saint Land Enforcement Hall look for me in the Black Turtle Sanctum? Duan Lingtian could not figure it out no matter how much mulled over it. "I'm not sure about it as well. However, Wei He is with him as well," Meng Jin replied as he kept moving. Duan Lingtian caught up to him again and asked, "Wei He?" It was his first time hearing this name. Wei He is the great direct disciple of our Black Turtle Sanctum's Elder Lian. He's also the master of Yuan Hong whom you've killed 2 months ago. Meng Jin added. "Yuan Hong's master?" Duan Lingtian frowned as he became even more puzzled. Under Meng Jin's lead, Duan Lingtian arrived at a secluded palace situated at the north of the Black Turtle Sanctum. This palace was located in a forest and was very inconspicuous. If it was not for Meng Jin, Duan Lingtian would not have noticed this place. Although the place looked old, it was kept clean. As Duan Lingtian followed behind Meng Jin, Duan Lingtian saw a familiar figure as soon as he entered the palace. The familiar figure was one out of 3 figures standing inside the palace. That person was none other than the Black Turtle Sanctum's enforcement Elder Guoshang. "Elder Guoshang, why are you here as well?" Upon seeing Guoshang, Duan Lingtian could not help but ask through voice transmission. "Somebody filed a complaint saying that I abused my power for personal gain and falsified my report and lied about your innate spiritual root to clear you of your crimes," Guoshang answered through his voice transmission. "What?" Upon hearing his words, Duan Lingtian was stunned. Then, he shifted his gaze to a middle-aged man who was looking at him coldly. It was not difficult for him to figure out who that man was. "He's Wei He. He's the one who lodged a complaint against Elder Guoshang. He thinks that Elder Guoshang is lying about my innate spiritual root. It seems like Lian really doesn't believe that I possess a blue innate spiritual root." Chapter 1957. Chapter 1958. Elder Qian. "However, I'm afraid this time Lian has dug a grave for his own direct disciple." Duan Lingtian smirked coldly as he looked at Wei He. After Meng Jin brought Duan Lingtian inside, he looked at the old man standing in between Guoshang and Wei He before he said to Duan Lingtian, "Duan Lingtian, this is Elder Qian from the Saint Land Enforcement Hall." "Good day, Elder Qian," Duan Lingtian greeted the old man politely upon hearing Meng Jin's words. Elder Qian was a refined old man and had an amiable appearance. He nodded in response to Duan Lingtian's greeting through his half-closed eyes. He had a gentle and pleasant smile on his face. "You're Duan Lingtian?" "Yes." Duan Lingtian nodded. Elder Qian did not beat around the bush as he said bluntly, "The reason I came to your Black Turtle Sanctum this time is regarding the verdict that the Black Turtle Sanctum's enforcement Elder Guoshang made 2 months ago." Duan Lingtian nodded once again calmly. He did not look guilty at all. After all, there was nothing for him to feel guilty about. Upon seeing this, Wei He snorted coldly as he thought to himself, "Humph. You're trying to put on an act. When Elder Qian personally investigates this and tests your innate talent, I'd really like to see if you'll be able to remain calm." Wei He was certain that Duan Lingtian would be given the death sentence today. He was influenced by Lian and had the preconceived notion that Duan Lingtian only possessed a yellow innate spiritual root. Are you not surprised? Elder Qian asked curiously when he saw how calm Duan Lingtian was. Elder Qian, I've long suspected that this moment would come. However, I just didn't expect the person who wants to overturn Elder Guo Shang's verdict isn't Elder Lian from the Black Turtle Sanctum. When Duan Lingtian finished speaking, he looked at Wei He who was standing next to Elder Qian meaningfully. Wei He had originally planned on remaining silent. However, when he saw the mockery in Duan Lingtian's eyes, he was immediately enraged. He smirked coldly and said, "Why do my master have to personally attend to this matter?" Humph. However, Wei He's words elicited dissatisfaction from Elder Qian instead. Elder Qian snorted coldly. It's not that simple to overturn a verdict made by an enforcement elder. Before the truth comes to light, nothing's certain. In the fire worship sect, when one wanted to overturn a verdict that had been made by an enforcement elder, it was equivalent to giving the Saint Land Enforcement Hall a slap in the face. In the fire worship sect, all of the enforcement elders, including the 4 enforcement elders in the 4 symbols sanctums, were all under the jurisdiction of the Saint Land Enforcement Hall. Doubting the verdict made by any one of the enforcement elder was equivalent to doubting the Saint Land Enforcement Hall's judgment when they selected their enforcement elders. For this reason, when Lian tried to lodge a complaint against the Black Turtle Sanctum's enforcement elder Guo Shang that he abused his power for personal gain, the elder who was in charge at that time had intentionally warned him. It was fine to lodge a complaint against an enforcement elder appointed by the enforcement hall, but if it was found that the complainant was slandering the enforcement elder, the complainant would be guilty of blaspheming the Saint Land Enforcement Hall. In the fire worship sect, the Saint Land Enforcement Hall was in charge of enforcing the law. It was also a very sacred and awe-inspiring place. If somebody dared to blaspheme the Saint Land Enforcement Hall, they would be severely punished. The sanctity of the Saint Land Enforcement Hall was not allowed to be violated at all. In the history of the fire worship sect, there were many people who tried to blaspheme the Saint Land Enforcement Hall with various methods. Although most of these people did not do it intentionally, the Saint Land Enforcement Hall did not bother with that at all. Half of these people died from the severe punishments by the Saint Land Enforcement Hall. Yes, Elder Qian. Upon hearing Elder Qian's snort, Wei He could not help but shudder. He no longer dared to say anything after he quickly responded to him. However, he still looked at Duan Lingtian with a hint of mockery. Whoosh! Elder Qian was a straightforward person. With a raise of his hand, he took out a spiritual pearl and passed it to Duan Lingtian. Use the spiritual pearl to determine your innate spiritual root first. If it shows that you possess the blue innate spiritual root, I'll use my divine consciousness to see into your soul and investigate if you really possess a blue innate spiritual root. Do you have any objections? Elder Qian's gaze turned sharper as he looked at Duan Lingtian when he finished speaking. It inadvertently pressured Duan Lingtian. I'll do as you say, Elder Qian. Under Wei He's shocked gaze, Duan Lingtian who was faced with the pressure Elder Qian emitted still remained calm. He readily reached out to take spiritual pearl from Elder Qian. Things have already escalated to this point, how's he still so calm? Wei He was certain Duan Lingtian was merely putting on an act earlier to fool them. However, the fact that he could remain calm even at this point made Wei He feel extremely uneasy. The Black Turtle Sanctum's enforcement elder Guo Shang stood on the other side of Elder Qian. From the beginning until the end, his expression remained unchanged. In his opinion, his verdict had been made according to the fire worship sect's unspoken rule. He was not guilty at all. For this reason, in his eyes, Wei He's filing a complaint to the Saint Land Enforcement Hall against him was merely a joke. The person who would be placed in a disadvantageous position in the end would not be him anyway. As Duan Lingtian took hold of the spiritual pearl, apart from Guo Shang who did not even bother to pay attention to it, Elder Qian from the Saint Land Enforcement Hall, Wei He, and Meng Jin were staring intently at the spiritual pearl in Duan Lingtian's hand with utmost concentration as they waited for the change in the spiritual pearl. It would change after a span of 10 breaths. Time continued to pass by quietly. The span of a breath went by. The span of 2 breaths went by. When the span of 10 breaths had passed, the spiritual pearl in Duan Lingtian began to show changes. Elder Qian, Wei He, and Meng Jin instantly narrowed their eyes. Under the gaze of the 3 men, a faint blue light began to shine from within the spiritual pearl before it gradually turned more and more dazzling. He really has a blue innate spiritual root. Meng Jin could not help but exclaim in his deep voice. Impossible. Wei He's originally anxious expression turned horrified instead when he saw the blue light shining from the spiritual pearl in Duan Lingtian's hand. There was also an expression of shock and disbelief on his face. Something must be wrong with this spiritual pearl. I have a spiritual pearl with me as well. Use mine and try again. Wei He said as he hurriedly took out another spiritual pearl and threw it at Duan Lingtian. Smack! Although Duan Lingtian could have just ignored the spiritual pearl that Wei He threw at him, in order to make Wei He give up and fall into despair, he caught the spiritual pearl that Wei He threw at him. He would use Wei He's spiritual pearl to determine his innate spiritual root. When Wei He saw Duan Lingtian had caught his spiritual pearl, he stared at the spiritual pearl with utmost concentration. There was a hint of hope in his eyes. At this moment, his spiritual pearl was like his last hope. Unfortunately, after a span of 10 breaths, a dazzling blue light appeared on his spiritual pearl as well. He had a horrified expression on his face as his eyes were filled with disbelief and despair. How could this happen? Impossible, impossible. When you entered the fire worship sect, my master personally witnessed you undergoing the innate talent assessment twice. Both times it was shown that you possess the yellow innate spiritual root. You must be tricking us. Wei He roared with an expression of disbelief on his face. At this moment, he had completely lost his composure. Meng Jin shook his head as he glanced at Wei He. At this moment, even him, an outsider, was certain that Duan Lingtian possessed a blue innate spiritual root. As for why Duan Lingtian was found to possess a yellow innate spiritual root when he went through the innate talent assessment, he had no idea at all. He only believed what he had seen with his own eyes. Enough. Only when Elder Qian shouted that Wei He regained his senses and fell silent. Whether he's tricking us or not, it'll be revealed once I use my divine consciousness to investigate and sense his innate spiritual root. Upon hearing Elder Qian's statement, a hint of hope appeared in Wei He's eyes again. Once again he regarded Elder Qian's divine consciousness as his last hope. Duan Lingtian, my divine consciousness will only investigate and sense your innate spiritual root, it won't harm your soul so you don't have to feel pressured. Just relax, and let things take its course, Elder Qian said as he looked at Duan Lingtian. All right, Duan Lingtian nodded. Duan Lingtian's readiness to cooperate made Elder Qian liked him more. After smiling at him, he extended his divine consciousness to investigate and sense Duan Lingtian's innate spiritual root. The instant Elder Qian's divine consciousness entered Duan Lingtian's soul, it pressured Duan Lingtian immediately. This was because Elder Qian's divine consciousness was very powerful. However, compared to Elder Huo's divine consciousness, Elder Qian's divine consciousness was much weaker. It seems like Elder Huo's strength has recovered quite a lot. If only he can come out of the 7 treasures exquisite pagoda, with the help of his currently restored strength and all kinds of divine abilities, even the Golden Flame Elders in the fire worship sect might not be a match for him. He thought it was a pity that Elder Huo could not leave the pagoda. Otherwise, Elder Huo would be a big help to him. If he had someone so strong helping him, he would have rushed into the fire worship sect's Saint Land Enforcement Hall directly to save his wife and daughter and bring them away from the fire worship sect. Is this Wei He an idiot? It has already come to this stage, and yet, he still has hope. When Elder Qian extended his divine consciousness into Duan Lingtian's soul, Duan Lingtian glanced at Wei He and saw the hope gleaming in Wei He's eyes. Chapter 1958. Very soon, under the watchful eyes of the others, Elder Qian withdrew his divine consciousness. At once, Wei He looked at him as the glimmer of hope in his eyes intensified. Duan Lingtian's innate spiritual root is indeed the blue spiritual root. Elder Qian glanced at Wei He when he sensed his eyes on him. His eyes turned cold instantly as he snarled. Wei He, you slandering the Black Turtle Sanctum's enforcement Elder Guo Shang is equivalent to blaspheming our Saint Land Enforcement Hall's sanctity. Follow me to the Saint Land Enforcement Hall immediately and accept your punishment. The moment Elder Qian's words left his mouth, Wei He was terrified. Elder Qian, I'm merely upset because of my direct disciple's death. I wasn't thinking clearly. Please show mercy, Elder Qian. Please show mercy. In the next instant, Wei He kept begging for mercy from Elder Qian. He no longer cared about Duan Lingtian. If he went to the Saint Land Enforcement Hall, he would be flayed even if he was not killed. Humph. Elder Qian completely ignored Wei He's begging. After he snorted, he waved his big hands as a vast energy pressed down on Wei He and restrained him. After restraining Wei He, Elder Qian lifted him up with one hand like an eagle carrying a little chick. Elder Guo Shang, the Saint Land Enforcement Hall will deal with the matter of Wei He slandering you. Elder Qian looked at Guo Shang. After he finished speaking, he brought Wei He, who had turned pale, away in just a blink of an eye. Duan Lingtian, I can't believe you actually possess a blue innate spiritual root. After Elder Qian brought Wei He away, Meng Jin looked at Duan Lingtian and sighed emotionally. I was curious about Elder Guo Shang's verdict. He seemed to be protecting you. As it turns out, you have a blue innate spiritual root. That's why you're given special treatment according to the fire worship sect's unspoken rule. Thank you for leading me here earlier, Elder Meng Jin. Duan Lingtian nodded at Meng Jin. Although he was not fond of Zhang Ji, Meng Jin's direct disciple, he acknowledged that Meng Jin was a decent person. At the very least, Meng Jin would not unreasonably side with someone who was in the wrong. This could be seen from the way Meng Jin spoke during their journey here. I still have some matters to attend to, so I'll take my leave first, Elder Guo Shang, Duan Lingtian. Soon after, Meng Jin bade farewell and left Duan Lingtian and Guo Shang alone in the palace. Actually, Guo Shang had requested for Meng Jin to leave through voice transmission since there was something he wanted to speak to Duan Lingtian about privately. Duan Lingtian, you will head to our 4 symbols sanctums, first mine, for your service in a month. Have you prepared for it? Guo Shang asked as he looked at Duan Lingtian. I've prepared long ago, Duan Lingtian smiled nonchalantly as he said, speaking of, thank you, Elder Guo Shang. Otherwise, I would have been sentenced to death 2 months ago. Don't thank me, you know very well it's all because of your blue innate spiritual root that you managed to survive. If your innate talent is not the blue innate spiritual root but just the yellow innate spiritual root as rumored, I wouldn't have been able to protect you. Guo Shang said, perhaps, at that time, we would be here as well. Just that our situation would be reversed with Wei He. Wei He, Duan Lingtian narrowed his eyes as it turned cold. He asked, Elder Guo Shang, what kind of punishment will be given to Wei He for slandering you and blaspheming the Saint Land Enforcement Hall? Would he be sentenced to death by the Saint Land Enforcement Hall? No, it won't be to the extent where he'll be sentenced to death. Guo Shang shook his head. His eyes flashed coldly as soon as Wei He was mentioned. However, even if they don't kill him, he'll be flayed at least. Blaspheming the Saint Land Enforcement Hall is not a minor crime. Not only that, but Elder Qian promised me earlier that the Saint Land Enforcement Hall would deal with this matter. Based on his words, I'm certain Wei He's punishment wouldn't be light. He wouldn't be sentenced to death. Duan Lingtian was slightly disappointed when he heard this. It was apparent Wei He was trying to get him killed today. If he still possessed a yellow innate spiritual root, he would have died because of Wei He. Duan Lingtian had always believed in the saying, an eye for an eye. It was only natural that he felt disappointed when he heard that Wei He would not be sentenced to death by the Saint Land Enforcement Hall. Why, do you really wish for him to die? Duan Lingtian did not bother to conceal his disappointment, so it was easy for Guo Shang to see through his thoughts. Don't tell me you don't wish him dead for slandering you, Elder Guo Shang. Duan Lingtian asked in return. In my opinion, even if he doesn't die, he'll be flayed. This is enough to quell my anger. Naturally, I'll feel a lot better if he's sentenced to death. When Duan Lingtian heard the first half of Guo Shang's words, he felt slightly disappointed. However, when he heard the final part of his sentence, he realized Guo Shang felt the same way he did. However, it won't be easy for me to get him a death sentence. If he isn't at the Saint Celestial stage or above, it would definitely be impossible for him to withstand the punishment from the Saint Land Enforcement Hall. Unfortunately, as a Saint Land Bronze Flame Elder, he's at the Saint Celestial stage. Guo Shang sighed. A hint of regret could be heard in his voice. Elder Guo Shang. However, Duan Lingtian's eyes brightened suddenly as he asked, if I'm not mistaken, the matter of Wei He lodging a report against you and asking the Saint Land Enforcement Hall to reinvestigate the matter has not spread out, right? Yes. Guo Shang nodded. Usually, the Saint Land Enforcement Hall won't spread this kind of news. After all, the Enforcement Hall is uncertain whether I'm guilty or not. If I am, the sanctity of the Saint Land Enforcement Hall would be tarnished if news of it spreads out. It's just as I thought. Duan Lingtian nodded. His eyes flashed coldly as he asked, however, if the news of how Wei He slandered you and blasphemed the Saint Land Enforcement Hall today spreads out, what would happen? Since news of this won't tarnish the sanctity of the Saint Land Enforcement Hall, the Saint Land Enforcement Hall won't investigate the source of the news, right? Theoretically, you're right. However, if news spreads out, the Saint Land Enforcement Hall will suffer from pressure as well. If Wei He's punishment is too light, it won't be able to show that the sanctity of the Saint Land Enforcement Hall is inviolable. Guo Shang answered Duan Lingtian. However, when he finished speaking, his eyes brightened up immediately as he stared at Duan Lingtian intently. You mean, we should spread this news and let the Saint Land Enforcement Hall kill Wei He to protect the Saint Land Enforcement Hall's sanctity out of pressure? Not me, but you. Duan Lingtian shook his head. I'm merely an ordinary Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple, so I daren't spread this news for fear of offending the Saint Land Enforcement Hall. However, as the Black Turtle Sanctum's enforcement elder who was appointed by the Saint Land Enforcement Hall, even if you spread this news, the Saint Land Enforcement Hall won't blame you at all, Elder Guo Shang. Not only that, but if you do so, the Saint Land Enforcement Hall will only think that you're spreading this news out of revenge because of Wei He slandering you. Duan Lingtian's words were flawless. Duan Lingtian, you seem to have everything planned out. Guo Shang was stunned by Duan Lingtian's words. When he regained his senses, he stared at Duan Lingtian intently. However, how are you so sure that I'll do as you say and spread this news to pressure the Saint Land Enforcement Hall to kill Wei He? I'm not certain. Duan Lingtian shook his head. I'm merely giving you a suggestion, Elder Guo Shang. As for whether you choose to spread this news or not, it's all up to you. Just like you, although I want him dead, his death would not affect me at all. I, Duan Lingtian, dare to offend his master, Lian, why would I be afraid of him? Duan Lingtian smiled mockingly when he reached the end of his sentence. Duan Lingtian, previously, I thought it was unwise for you to oppose Lian since it seems like you're overestimating yourself. However, right now, why do I suddenly feel that you might be the one who ends up having the last laugh? Guo Shang stared at Duan Lingtian again. He was calm outwardly, but in actual truth, a tempestuous storm had been set off in his heart. This method of forcing the Saint Land Enforcement Hall to kill Wei He that Duan Lingtian came up with showed how meticulous he was, unlike other people. At the very least, Guo Shang had never thought of this before. You flatter me, Elder Guo Shang. I'm merely an ordinary Black Turtle Sanctum's disciple. How can I possibly fight with Lian? He's our Black Turtle Sanctum's first Silver Flame Elder after all. Duan Lingtian smiled humbly, but his words were said without sincerity. Naturally, Guo Shang could see the insincerity of Duan Lingtian's words, but he did not point them out. Guo Shang smiled indifferently before he said, Duan Lingtian, I intend to recommend you to Lord Sanctum Leader as a direct disciple. Duan Lingtian, if Lord Sanctum Leader agrees to take you as his direct disciple, you won't be punished at all if he recommends you to become a Saint Land disciple. However, when I went to look for Lord Sanctum Leader 2 months ago, I was told he was at a critical juncture in his closed-door cultivation. For this reason, I didn't interrupt him. Up until now, he has yet to come out. Guo Shang continued to add, if Lord Sanctum Leader still hasn't come out of his closed-door cultivation in a month, I'll have no choice but to personally send you to the first mine in our 4 symbol sanctums. However, don't worry, I'll recommend you to Lord Sanctum Leader as soon as he comes out of his closed-door cultivation. Duan Lingtian widened his eyes when he heard Guo Shang's words. Lord Sanctum Leader was actually in closed-door cultivation. He instantly dismissed the idea of watching him casting the divine ability, the Black Turtle's Barrier. Chapter 1959, Elder Guo Shang. Duan Lingtian turned solemn as he looked at Guo Shang. I understand your good intention for wanting to recommend me to Lord Sanctum Leader. I appreciate your kindness, but I must decline your offer. I already have a master. Not only that, but the tradition from my hometown is once I have a master, I have to get permission from my master if I want to accept another master. Otherwise, it would be equivalent to treason. Duan Lingtian said resolutely. You already have a master. Guo Shang was slightly astonished. He asked, which force does your master belong to? My master is only a sectless cultivator. Duan Lingtian shook his head. Duan Lingtian, you must think it through. In the fire worship sect, if you can become the direct disciple of a golden flame elder such as Lord Sanctum Leader, it would only benefit you. Guo Shang advised Duan Lingtian solemnly, put everything else aside, just take the enmity between you and Lian as an example. If you become the direct disciple of the Sanctum Leader of our Black Turtle Sanctum, Lian wouldn't dare to plot against you even if he's 10 times more courageous. Most importantly, Lord Sanctum Leader won't mind if you have another master or not. As long as you're willing to become his direct disciple, he definitely won't reject you based on your innate talent. Guo Shang was patient when he advised Duan Lingtian. In his opinion, with Duan Lingtian's blue innate spiritual root, coupled with his monstrous ability in comprehending divine abilities, he would definitely be the most sought-after martial genius with a blue innate spiritual root in the fire worship sect. He was undeniably sure that as long as he recommended Duan Lingtian to the sanctum leader of Black Turtle Sanctum, he would definitely accept Duan Lingtian as his disciple without a second thought. Elder Guo Shang, there's no need for you to advise me further. I've already made up my mind. Duan Lingtian shook his head. He spoke resolutely. Naturally, he was tempted by Guo Shang's proposal. However, he felt that it was inappropriate. Put aside that it would be a disservice to his master, Feng Qingyang, whom he had never met before, even if his master did not mind, he was not willing to drag another person into his mess. That was right, he was unwilling to drag another person into his mess. The reason he came to the fire worship sect was not to become a true fire worship sect's disciple and continue to rise to a high position and become a high-ranking official in the fire worship sect. His only purpose of coming to the fire worship sect was to save his wife and daughter. One could imagine that if he accepted a master in the fire worship sect, his master would definitely be affected, whether or not he knew of his plan, after he saved his wife and daughter. As the saying went, he who teaches me for a day is my father for life. Put aside the other person was his master, if possible, Duan Lingtian did not want to implicate any innocent people at all. All right, since you're already made up your mind, I won't persuade you anymore. Guo Shang stopped persuading him since he could sense his determination. After sighing, he added again, 1 month later, I'll pick you up, and we can head to the first mine of the 4 symbols sanctums. As soon as he finished speaking, he left and did not bid farewell to Duan Lingtian. It was obvious he was a little angry at how stubborn Duan Lingtian was. After Guo Shang left, Duan Lingtian returned to the residence of the Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples in his Secundus house. However, in the next month, he did not enter closed-door cultivation. Instead, he constantly comprehended the sovereign heart sword and further comprehended the divine abilities, the elementary devouring tactic and the otherworldly celestial, that he had mastered. As for the divine ability, the Black Turtle's barrier, he put it aside for the time being. Before I can observe someone casting the Black Turtle's barrier, there's no point in me wasting my time comprehending it. This was the reason Duan Lingtian decided to put it aside for the time being. Besides, both divine abilities, the elementary devouring tactic and the otherworldly celestial, still had room for improvement. For this reason, Duan Lingtian spent time comprehending them. Heaven would always reward the faithful. 10 months later, Duan Lingtian finally managed to touch the threshold of the 3rd stage of the sovereign hard sword and further mastered the divine ability, the otherworldly celestial. However, he seemed to have reached a bottleneck when it came to the divine ability, the elementary devouring tactic, and was unable to make any progress for a long time. It's time. With just a thought, Duan Lingtian left the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda. After he put away the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda, he pushed the door open and walked into the little courtyard outside of the house before sitting down in front of the stone table in the courtyard. 10 months inside the 7 Treasures Exquisite Pagoda was only 1 month outside. Judging by the time, Elder Guo Shang should be arriving soon, Duan Lingtian thought to himself as he sat in front of the stone table. At this moment, a voice rang from below his Secundus house. Did you hear? Wei He, Elder Li An's great direct disciple, has been sentenced to death by the Saint Land Enforcement Hall 3 days ago. Wei He was sentenced to death. Duan Lingtian was stunned when he heard this. Another voice chimed in, are you serious? He's been sentenced to death. Just because news of what happened spread out. Humph, don't look down on that piece of news. Nobody knows who had intentionally spread the news and said that Wei He has violated the sanctity of the Saint Land Enforcement Hall and has been detained by the Saint Land Enforcement Hall. The voice that spoke earlier said, perhaps, the Saint Land Enforcement Hall did not plan to kill Wei He in the first place since he was still a bronze flame elder with a blue innate spiritual root. However, somebody leaked out news of Wei He blaspheming and violating the sanctity of the Saint Land Enforcement Hall. This is no doubt an act of adding fuel to the flame. At this moment, if the Saint Land Enforcement Hall still doesn't sentence Wei He to death, wouldn't they be tarnishing their own sanctity? In our fire worship sect, the Saint Land Enforcement Hall is a sacred place that allows no blasphemy. If a person could still live on after blaspheming such a place, what would the others think? Nobody would take the Saint Land Enforcement Hall seriously anymore if that's the case. One must admit that the owner of this voice had seen through everything. I must agree, you have a point. However, did you know how Wei He had blasphemed the Saint Land Enforcement Hall? The owner of the other voice asked. I have no idea. It's said that Wei He was unsatisfied with the Black Turtle Sanctum's enforcement Elder Guo Shang's verdict regarding Duan Lingtian, so he went to the Saint Land Enforcement Hall to file a complaint against Elder Guo Shang for malpractice. The former voice answered again, I heard that the Saint Land Enforcement Hall had to personally send a man to our Black Turtle Sanctum to investigate this matter, and the result of the investigation is Wei He was found guilty of slandering Elder Guo Shang. Not only did Wei He fail to avenge his disciple, but he even lost his own lowly life. How sad, the other person said. It seems like Elder Guo Shang decided to leak the news in the end. Duan Lingtian smiled indifferently when he found out Guo Shang had taken his advice. Duan Lingtian. Just as Duan Lingtian was thinking of Guo Shang, a voice resonated from afar. The voice belonged to someone with a large build. It was none other than Guo Shang. Guo Shang came according to the schedule to bring Duan Lingtian to the Four Symbols Sanctums, first mine to serve his time. Elder Guo Shang, since you leaked the news, did the Saint Land Enforcement Hall investigate who leaked the news? Duan Lingtian could not help but ask as they made their way to the Four Symbols Sanctums, first mine. Yes, they did. Guo Shang nodded before taking a good look at Duan Lingtian. Just like you said, even after the Saint Land Enforcement Hall found out it was me who leaked the news, they did not make things difficult for me. Everything was just as Duan Lingtian had predicted. For this reason, Guo Shang felt Duan Lingtian was really meticulous. In his heart, he even made a decision not to make an enemy out of Duan Lingtian even if he had to fall out with Lian. In his opinion, Duan Lingtian was even more dangerous than Lian was. Now that Wei He has been executed, I believe Lian must be upset, right? Duan Lingtian smiled nonchalantly. In his opinion, Lian was the one who dug the grave for his own great direct disciple. If it was not for the fact that Lian had informed Wei He of the truth about Duan Lingtian merely possessing a yellow innate spiritual root, Wei He would not have been so stupid as to file a complaint to the Saint Land Enforcement Hall against Guo Shang for malpractice. One could say that it was Wei He who looked for his own death. Moreover, it was all because of Lian. Wei He was executed by the Saint Land Enforcement Hall 3 days ago, but the news has only reached our Black Turtle Sanctum today. Even if Lian found out about the news, I'm sure he has only learned about it not too long ago, Guo Shang chimed in. Just as Guo Shang predicted, Lian had just learned about Wei He being executed by the Saint Land Enforcement Hall. Bang! As a loud sound resonated, the stone table in front of Lian crumbled instantly into dust. Hey, I've failed you. Lian's expression was grave, and his eyes were bloodshot. He emitted a terrifyingly cold aura that it seemed as though the temperature in the surroundings had dropped by a few degrees. Wei He was his great direct disciple. He was also his first direct disciple. He had especially doted on this direct disciple to the point where he regarded him as his own son. However, the direct disciple he had regarded as his own son had died. I was the one who had underestimated Duan Lingtian. I can't believe he possesses a blue innate spiritual root. Lian felt pressured as well after learning that Duan Lingtian possessed a blue innate spiritual root. Now that he found out his great direct disciple was sentenced to death by the Saint Land Enforcement Hall, he really wanted to knock on Duan Lingtian's door and kill him. Lian blamed Wei He's death on Duan Lingtian completely. At this instant, his desire to kill Duan Lingtian had reached an unprecedented high. Duan Lingtian, you cost me my family, so I'm going to let you have a taste of this feeling as well. Lian thought to himself as his eyes flashed coldly and a terrifying killing intent surged out of his body. In the next instant, he left his residence in the Black Turtle Sanctum. His destination was the White Tiger Sanctum. Chapter 1960. There was only one reason for Lian to head to the White Tiger Sanctum, and it was to look for Duan Lingtian's companion, Zhu Luqi. He still remembered Duan Lingtian had 2 companions when he first came to the fire worship sect. After further investigation, he learned that Duan Lingtian's companions' names were Ji Yuli and Zhu Luqi respectively. The former was in the Vermilion Bird Sanctum while the latter was in the White Tiger Sanctum. Humph. I refuse to believe that Zhu Luqi and Ji Yuli would be in closed-door cultivation all the time like Duan Lingtian, Lian thought to himself with a snort. His expression was solemn. Since 3 months ago, after Duan Lingtian had killed Yuan Hong, Li An's grand disciple in the Vermilion Bird Sanctum, Li An had always been lurking in the vicinity of the residence of the Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples, residents, waiting for Duan Lingtian to be alone so he could cast the soul-searching secret tactic on him. He did not dare to kill Duan Lingtian in the fire worship sect even if Duan Lingtian was alone. The punishment from the Saint Land Enforcement Hall was far beyond what one could imagine. Moreover, they might even make him swear on the lightning penalty oath that he did not kill Duan Lingtian if they suspected him. He did not dare to take this risk. However, if he performed the soul-searching secret tactic on Duan Lingtian without anyone around and did not affect Duan Lingtian much, with his position as a Silver Flame Elder, the Saint Land Enforcement Hall usually would not take action even if they found out about it. Unfortunately, during these 3 months, Duan Lingtian had been in closed-door cultivation so he could not find a chance to cast the soul-searching secret tactic on Duan Lingtian. Today, Duan Lingtian would be going to the first mine of the 4 Symbol Sanctums to serve his time. The Black Turtle Sanctum's enforcement elder Guoshang would be escorting him there. Li An knew he would not be able to cast the soul-searching secret tactic on Duan Lingtian for the time being. Since Li An could not cast it on Duan Lingtian, he decided he would look for a chance from Jiu Li and Zhu Luqi. The White Tiger Sanctum that Zhu Luqi was in was nearer to the Black Turtle Sanctum, so he decided to head to the White Tiger Sanctum first. Perhaps, it was it luck. As soon as he arrived in the White Tiger Sanctum, he immediately discovered a familiar White Tiger Sanctum's disciple who was just leaving the White Tiger Sanctum's altar and was returning to the residence of the White Tiger Sanctum's disciples. Moreover, there was no one around him at all. That disciple was none other than Zhu Luqi. Whoosh! Li An instantly charged toward Zhu Luqi. His speed was so fast it was as though he had transformed into a gust of wind. Who is it? The sound of wind whistling rang in Zhu Luqi's ears, causing horror to dawn on him since he could tell the sound was headed for him. However, before Zhu Luqi could even react, a vast and terrifying energy from Li An had already shrouded him. It caused him to lose all mobility. He was completely under Li An's control at this moment. Zhu Luqi discovered the scenery before his eyes kept changing as someone carried him and flew swiftly to who knew where. After a while, the person who carried him finally slowed down before coming to halt. Li An, although he could not see the other person's appearance from the beginning until the end, it was not difficult for him to guess who it was. It was obvious Li An had intentionally brought Zhu Luqi away. Zhu Luqi suddenly recalled Duan Lingtian's warning from 3 months ago. He remembered the secret tactic that had been passed to him that could combat the soul-searching secret tactic. In just a flash, an old man appeared before him. Zhu Luqi had seen this man once when he first entered the fire worship sect. He was none other than the Black Turtle Sanctum's first Silver Flame Elder Li An. He had guessed correctly. When Li An performed the soul-searching secret tactic on Zhu Luqi, before Zhu Luqi lost consciousness, a thought appeared in his mind. Lucky I've been using the secret tactic Duan Lingtian had passed to me. Li An stood in front of Zhu Luqi as he stared at Zhu Luqi's eyes that had turned dim before he asked indifferently, "Who are you?" Zhu Luqi. Zhu Luqi, whose eyes had lost their light, seemed like the walking dead. As soon as he heard Li An's question, he instantly answered him without any hesitation. "Who's Duan Lingtian?" Li An asked again. "My friend," Zhu Luqi replied. "What's his background? Where did he come from?" Li An asked again. This time a hint of excitement appeared in his eyes. This was what he wanted to know the most. As long as he could find information about Duan Lingtian's background, he could pass the information to Yang Chong, the 5th elder of the Northern Plethora sect. Naturally, Yang Chong would deal with all the people who had connections to Duan Lingtian. Perhaps, if they capture Duan Lingtian's close friends and families, he might be able to force Duan Lingtian to leave the fire worship sect. Once Duan Lingtian left the fire worship sect, he would become like meat on their chopping boards. They would be able to kill him however they liked. "I don't know." Zhu Luqi's answer made the smile on Li An's face freeze immediately. He continued to ask in a grim voice, "Aren't you friends? Why don't you know his background? I only met him a few days before I came to the fire worship sect. I don't know his background. He has never mentioned it before, and I didn't ask as well," Zhu Luqi answered Li An lifelessly. "Damn it." Upon hearing Zhu Luqi's words, Li An's expression turned grave immediately. He knew he had felt happy too soon. Zhu Luqi did not know anything about Duan Lingtian's background at all. Humph. Since he could not get an answer from Zhu Luqi, he no longer wasted his time on him and left immediately. As soon as Li An left, Zhu Luqi's eyes regained its liveliness. When he regained his senses, he discovered he was in a secluded forest in the White Tiger Sanctum now. As soon as he regained his senses, he remembered what had just occurred as he muttered under his breath, Lian must have cast the soul-searching secret tactic on me. I hope the technique to combat the soul-searching secret tactic that Duan Lingtian passed to me worked. Otherwise, I'm afraid I've already unknowingly betrayed him. Meanwhile, Lian had already left the White Tiger Sanctum when he realized Zhu Luqi did not have the answer he wanted. He was currently making his way to the Vermilion Bird Sanctum. He was prepared to sit and wait for a chance to catch Ji Yuli so that he could perform the soul-searching secret tactic on him. Lian was obviously unaware that Ji Yuli had already left the Vermilion Bird Sanctum and the Fire Worship sect 3 months ago. Duan Lingtian was, naturally, unaware of Li An's sneaky actions. Currently, he was being escorted by the Black Turtle Sanctum's enforcement Elder Guo Shang as they drew closer to the Four Symbols Sanctum's first mine. Elder Guo Shang, I heard there are many first-grade Saint Stone reserves in our Fire Worship sect. Moreover, we even have a quasi-celestial grade Saint Stone reserve. Is the quasi-celestial grade Saint Stone reserve located in the first mine? Duan Lingtian asked as he looked at Guo Shang. Of course not. Guo Shang shook his head before continuing to say, to our Fire Worship sect, the quasi-celestial grade Saint Stone reserve is very important. Naturally, it's not in the Four Symbols Sanctums. Even if the location of the quasi-celestial grade doesn't have any spirit-gathering formations, the cultivation environment is still very good. It's hidden underground in the Saint Land's central district and is usually mined by the slaves of Saint Land elders and disciples who are banished to the mine as punishment. Due to its presence, our Fire Worship sect's Saint Land has one of the best cultivation environments in the upper province of the Dao Martial Saint Land. Coupled with the help of the spirit-gathering formation, the cultivation environment is even better. Duan Lingtian finally understood what a quasi-celestial grade Saint Stone reserve was. Just like the Secundus house in the residence of the Black Turtle Sanctum's disciples, each of the 5 spirit-gathering formation had a few quasi-celestial grade Saint Stones as their foundations. Due to this reason, it was very efficient for one to cultivate in a Secundus house. The other forces in the upper province of the Dao Martial Saint Land could not compare to it. Only the other 2 great sects in the upper province of the Dao Martial Saint Land like the Fire Worship sect would be able to use quasi-celestial grade Saint Stones on their outer disciples. Because of the spirit-gathering formations, there was no need for one to cultivate by holding the Saint Stone in one's hand anymore since the spirit-gathering formation would extract the heaven and earth spirit energy from the Saint Stone for the cultivators to absorb. Other than that quasi-celestial grade Saint Stone reserve, the remaining first-grade Saint Stone reserves are in our Four Symbols Sanctums. The first mine of the Four Symbols Sanctums you'll be serving at is the largest first-grade Saint Stone reserve in the sect. Guo Shang said. Duan Lingtian learned a lot about the Four Symbols Sanctums, first mine from Guo Shang. Apart from learning that it was the biggest first-grade Saint Stone reserve in the Fire Worship sect, he also learned it was divided into 2 zones. One zone was big and the other small. The big zone was called the Slave Zone since it housed many slaves from all over the place in the upper province. Their destiny was set in stone the moment they arrived in the sect. If they did not want to die, they had to obediently remain in the sect and spend their whole lives mining Saint Stones for the sect. The small zone was also known as the Punishment Zone. The people mining here were disciples from the Fire Worship sect's Four Symbols Sanctums who had committed crimes. Among the Four Symbols Sanctums, disciples who were serving there were some who were sentenced with a short term ranging from 3 to 5 years, and there were those who were sentenced with a long term that could go up to hundreds of years. Only the first mine has a punishment zone. The remaining mines are mined by slaves, Guo Shang explained. Duan Lingtian nodded. He also learned that the Four Symbols Sanctums' first mine was monitored by 2 Golden Flame Elders. The remaining mines were also being put under the care of a Golden Flame Elder. As for the 2 Golden Flame Elders in the Four Symbols Sanctums' first mine, one of them was in charge of the Slave Zone while the one was in charge of the Punishment Zone. Our Four Symbols Sanctums' first mine is just right in front. Guo Shang's voice rang in the air, causing Duan Lingtian to regain his senses.